Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 239. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
SHAZADAM.
We're getting to that. Connor's also here.
I am, yes.
The DC Comics podcast. We get together. We've read some DC Comics. Coming up on this week's show, there is some news, including SHAZADAM. But we also have the books we're going to talk about, which is Future State, the next Batman issue 3, Future State, Superman and Metropolis issue 2, Future State, Wonder Woman issue 2. And because of David, I had to read Future State, The Flash issue 2. Future State, Swamp Thing issue 2 is coming up today. And of course, Man Bat issue 1. Plus another Patreon book I read for this week, which is Animal Man issue 5. So that's what's coming up.
I didn't know that till just right now, and it just made my whole day.
I
didn't know it either.
Yes, I kept it secret so that you two could enjoy it when I revealed it to the world.
How long have you known that you had to read this?
He told me last night. I said, "Hey, David, what's Connor reading this month?" I was like, Future State Flash issue 2, and I almost started laughing. And he went, "For you," and I went, "No!"
You're tearing me apart, David.
Luckily for him, though, there's a new Red Hood book for Connor coming soon, so we'll get to that in the news in a second. But yes, so that's what's going up on the show. But we do have some news. We got some stuff to talk about. There's a whole thing, some books, announcements, all that stuff. So yes, episode 239 commence. SHAZADAM. We start with SHAZADAM, which is not really a news.
We can.
It's not really a news story because it's already completely debunked, which I knew it was going to be debunked. When Connor told me about it, I was like, this is not real. There's no way it's real. And sure enough, within 24 hours, every single person involved with the book, with the company, retailers who'd read the early copies, every single one of them said, no.
Yeah, my take on it was, I'm wondering if it's a joke in the book.
Yeah, I think
what it is. They've published. So this came from the site that we do not want to name because they're terrible, as proven by this exact article.
Mm-hmm.
They actually now have a copy of Infinite Frontier Zero.
Right.
So expect things to be spoiled. Basically, everything will be spoiled before it comes out.
Steer clear.
Yeah. So do your best, folks. I did look at the panels they posted that had this just a couple hours ago, actually, as we record this, because I was like, where has this come from? I have to know. And I don't think it's a spoiler to tell you what the context of this is. It's basically some people, I don't know where they are, what country they're in. Superman's like, oh, yeah, there. And they say, SHAZADAM was here. And Superman's like, what, Shazam was here? And they're like, no, SHAZADAM, because obviously they don't know what he's actually called. So they're linking something they do know with what they, that maybe there's a language barrier. I don't know exactly, but clearly there's some cross communication, and that's where it's come from. And that's all it is.
What I said as soon as I heard this is, I'm like, yeah, this probably comes from inside the book because there's probably I assumed it was maybe someone was making fun of him and called him SHAZADAM as a one panel joke. This is the same thing though. Is that there's an in context moment where someone gives him a stupid name. Does not equal DC Comics are renaming Black Adam as SHAZADAM.
Right. But Pete, then it's not a story. It's just a fun thing in a comic book, and you can't get clicks from fun stuff in comic books. So you gotta milk the outrage.
Clickbait trash is what that was, and
that's why we don't like that specific website, because sure they have scoops and they might have someone on the inside, but they do this type of BS, and it doesn't help anybody. And then you have the creatives weighing in, and like you could tell that Bendis was just kind of like, guys, don't fan the flames.
I believe his tweet was just, rumors are stupid.
Yeah,
honestly, I'm more annoyed at just people in general for even spreading this on Twitter, or even for a second anyone thinking it actually might be true. Do any of you have a brain? Really? Like, come on, seriously. If you thought this was real for a second, you're at least somewhat stupid. You have to be. There is no way this was ever going to be true.
I just love the idea that a character with, I don't know, 70 years of history, something like that, that has never once had a name change in all that time, is on the verge of their solo movie debut with a high-profile name attached to it that has been.
You could say
hype.
the highest profile name right now, right? Like,
whoa. It's not Gary Busey. Let's not say anything crazy.
but yeah.
But my point is, The Rock's been hyping this film up for years at this point already. It is, officially, going forward. It's there. It's being talked about in a very public capacity as Black Adam, and now they're going to change his name. Yeah, sure.
Right.
And that's ignoring what the shipping name's supposed to be in the first place.
Yeah, even ignoring that.
Okay, so that's out of the way, right? SHAZADAM.
It's still fun to say though, like SHAZADAM. Like it's great.
That's because if you put Shaz in front of anything, it's funny to say Shazamat, Shazapeter, Shazakana.
Shazam. Wait.
There you go. All right. So on to actual real news that we should pay somewhat attention to. So we know Yara Flores get her own book. It was originally going to be debuted in March, but it wasn't in the solicits, of course, when we actually got those. It just got pushed a little bit to May. Maybe I'm missing something in this article, but I believe this was originally a 6-issue series, and it may still be that, but I don't see any mention of it being a 6-issue limited series.
It definitely was, and maybe this is part of why it's delayed, is they've changed that. It's possible, but just because they don't mention it doesn't mean that it's not.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure. I'm going to assume it still is, and then just get a nice surprise otherwise.
We'll know for certain in the solicits, because it will say 1 of 6 if it is.
Yeah, which won't be yet, because that'll be next month's solicits. We'll get this in, or not?
May? No, we should get those next week, right?
Oh, you're right. No, we have. I was thinking we would have only had 1 month of post Future State solicits, but we have had 2, because we had a couple. We have 2 books. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay, we'll get them soon. I mean, if this ends up in an ongoing, then great, because I'm on board.
I mean, even if it is just a mini, I guarantee there's plans beyond that.
Probably,
unless of course it completely bombs and doesn't sell, in which case sure, they probably won't, but that's not going to happen.
They've already committed to a show, right?
Yeah.
Well, not committed. They're developing a show. Is the difference?
They're developing a show. Yeah.
No, but I get where that's coming from. The point there is, if they're already pushing to that extent, they're probably feeling confident in that she can sell a handful of issues.
And she's front and center in that Wonder Woman wraparound image, for Infinite Frontier. So I think that if I had to guess, I would say it's going to ongoing, versus staying a mini. But I'll take as much Yara Flores as they want to give,
Yeah. So that is that. So nothing super exciting here, but to get to the actual new books. So this one's interesting in that there's a new Red Hood book coming, but it's also interesting in it's the first official ongoing, which is actually set in Future State. It's not present day DC. It is a Future State book, starring Jason Todd, and the plot's going to be about him hunting Batman and the Bat family. The book's called Future State Gotham, which may even suggest to me that it might not always be a Red Hood book. It might switch after.
I think no, they've actually mentioned that it's the Red Hood story is the first 6 issues.
There you go.
But the fact that it's Gotham and not Future State Red Hood means there's probably going to be different stuff after that, right?
Which admittedly means that even though it's focusing on Red Hood to begin with, that this is probably worth checking out. And that artist whose name I learned last week and I've forgotten is has done some of the art here.
Yanis Milo Yanis. God damn it, I can't remember.
Milo Yanis.
Yeah, that one.
Milo no Yanis. There you go. Anyway, so yeah, he's done the art here. So it feels to be delving into sort of the status quo that we've learned about in Future State, Batman and all the surrounding titles.
What's really interesting about this to me is, so we've got obviously the Future State story with Red Hood going on right now with this team.
Mm-hmm.
So we got those in the 2 issues. Is that in Dark Detective?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. So we got that.
Dark Detective, yes.
Whatever. Look, I've been drinking. Shut up.
Of course he has.
Then we've got the Gotham anthology that's coming. Batman, I think it's called Urban Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a Red Hood story in it. And that's Williamson writing that for sure. But that's presumably present day, along with the rest of the the Infinite Frontier stuff. So, and then we've got this coming in May. So I wonder if we have like those 2 issues that are in the present day with the Red Hood story setting up, leading into the future state stuff that we're getting in this, and then maybe that'll rotate out of that anthology book and we'll have something else in the May solicits.
I suspect it probably will. If not right away, then soon after. No, it's interesting that they're continuing this magistrate stuff and they're continuing all the stuff that they are set, because there is a lot of stuff set up, and now that we're actually getting the endings of some of these stories this week, this is the first week we've had endings of like 2-issue arcs or whatever.
Yeah.
There is stuff open. There's open for more stories. So
on that stuff, Tynan's newsletter this week, he talked about his plans for Gotham coming up. He mentioned a few new characters and stuff, but he talked about there will be an arc in the very near future that will be establishing the origins of the Magistrate and Peacekeeper, 1, and going through that stuff. So that is something they are tackling, after Future State.
I think
that's the plan.
The concern I have with that is that it's fine with Batman, where I'm kind of into like the Future State like status quo. When it comes to something like, say, Flash, the idea that they're having to be locked into what that's set up for the future is like, oh, I hate you so much. Stop it.
It's
oh boy.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, because that and the Wonder Woman stuff, because we know that's pretty much following on, like in some ways, because that's also from the end of Metal in a lot of ways with the Diana stuff.
Yeah, and
so
all the Yara stuff is so separate from Diana that it doesn't really affect. Like when Diana comes back to present day at some point, and she will. It doesn't matter what they've set up in Future State Wonder Woman for Yara, because Diana's on her own. She's doing her own thing. They're not tied to anything with that really. Ups and downs in that sense, but so that's Future State Gotham. So, and to be fair, the Gotham corner, I mean, obviously Yara's the exception, and she is probably the single best part, but in terms of the best corner of Future State, I think the Gotham side of stuff is mostly the best part.
I would say it's definitely been the most consistent, at least like from an editorial perspective. It's been the most cohesive for sure.
Yeah, so that's cool. I mean, that's a fine place. But I do wonder if we get maybe 1 or 2 other Future State ongoings if they want to continue any of the other corners. Well,
I mean, we know that the Midnighter story is set.
That's in the backups. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's set in Future State. So I'm wondering, if there's going to be more rolling out.
Yeah, or maybe it's just maybe they'll just be in backups in other books, and the truth is that Batman/Gotham's the only one that can kind of sustain its own book based on sales.
Big enough, yeah, it's possible. But I do think it's interesting that Future State isn't just this 2-month experiment. They are keeping it around in some form or another.
Because it's the future, so it's not really a different Earth, but as time goes on, it will essentially become kind of not an Elseworld per se, but like an alternate timeline as opposed to what actually is going to happen, because that's just the nature of it.
It's weird because some of it might become true, like in the sense that we're setting up the Magistrate stuff, and Batman. Right. Gotham feels like the most likely that this will be the future. Oh,
but that's what I'm saying for now. But it's not going to stick. Like eventually, we're going to pivot as soon as we're away from Tynan, and as soon as we're doing the next phase of whatever Batman's going to go, we're probably going to be shifting from.
Which, admittedly, Tynan said he has at least a 3-year plan. So
maybe a while.
Yeah, it might be quite a while till we're past that.
But definitely going down that path at some point. Another thing spinning out of one of these Future State is we're getting a mini series with the Mr. Miracle that's been popping up in the Superman books. So this is Shiloh Norman, and this is coming from the same team, I think, that are doing the story in the Brandon Easton and artist Vico Ozio. I don't know if that's the same artist, but definitely the same writer.
I don't think it's the same artist. Yeah. I think it's the guy. I don't recognize the name.
But so we're getting a Mr. Miracle mini, 6-issue mini.
They said it's going to be a new origin for this character. Yeah.
So that's neat. He probably needs an introduction to most readers these days anyway, myself included, to be honest. So
well, again, I didn't realize he was created by Jack Kirby back in the 70s. So.
I'm just looking further down the article. They mentioned there's a variant with Valentin Delandro, and I think that's the artist that has been doing the stories in the Future State books.
Looking at the one preview page that's down below on this Newsarama article, the art does look promising. I say that not really knowing the artist that well. The title of the book, just to be specific, is Mr. Miracle: The Source of Freedom. Issue 1 I presume is in May. I didn't actually read that, but I assume it's because we're building up to May solicits, so that's when it's coming out.
It is. It's on May 4th. So.
Oh, they gave us a
week
date
one.
and everything. There you go.
Well, it's a good day.
No, it's not. It's a terrible day.
It's a good day.
It's a garbage day because a bunch of
Nope.
deluded fans co-opted it as to have meaning because it sounds kind of like a phrase. Anyway,
Look, you tweet every year that Happy Alien Day, so screw you.
Yeah.
hey, that number, the actual number's in the movie, all right? So that's more meaningful.
Yeah. When I do it, it's different, Connor.
When I do it, it's
That
different.
was-
That's different. All right, it's fine. Okay, we can all agree it's not a proper holiday like Batman Day, okay? The way Matt looks up there. All right. And then the last bit of news I've got this week is this is kind of an intriguing little one. Is that DC are going to do a digital first series, or maybe just digital only, where they're going to publish stuff that's already been done, and some of it quite old. That just like basically they've got a library of unpublished comics. You know, they hire people to write a book or an arc or whatever that never actually saw the light of day for various reasons. So it's kind of like a digital book that's like here's the deleted comics of our history. And they've announced what the first three issues are going to be. They're going to be Suicide Squad, Nightwing, and Batman stories. And they're sort of framing it. I think they're doing like a sort of wraparound with Ambush Bug to kind of give it some framing. But yeah, it's basically just here's some stories that never saw the light of day.
It makes perfect sense for them to do something with this. Like the Nightwing story is the Kelly and Lanzig story that I think was supposed to come right after the Seeley run on Nightwing at the start of Rebirth. I remember us speaking about this story at the time because they did a fill-in story and they had another one planned and it got shelved.
Yeah, I do wonder, if a lot of this is going to be like those one-issue fill-ins that they sometimes use to plug gaps between runs when they have nothing else, but they don't actually get around to using them all, and then eventually they're sold that they're just too like different from current continuity that they can't use them anymore.
That's
Right.
exactly what this is, and it's not worth them printing it. They're too risky to print and swallow those costs. But digital first, and more importantly, what they're actually doing with these for the first 30 days, these are exclusive to DC Universe Infinite.
Oh, there you go.
So it's just, hey, we've got exclusive comics on our service as well, not just the stuff that's 6 months old.
Yeah, and the writer of the Ambush Bug wraparound is Elliot Killan, who I've not heard, but apparently is a writer on Mystery Science Theater 3000. So that's an interesting little tidbit.
That kind of makes sense for what they're doing here, then.
Right. See if they actually did the silhouettes and had him do commentary to all these comics that never saw the light of day. That'd be
hilarious.
That would be, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a neat little thing. So if your curiosity gets the better of you, I'm not necessarily sure I'm actually excited to read any of these necessarily, but that's a cool thing to exist.
I'm intrigued, and I might check just because I've got DC Universe anyway. I might as well. I'm not paying anything for them.
It's the sort of thing where if someone says, "Hey, this one's really worth reading," if one gets a bit of buzz because it's really good, then I'll read that one. But I'm not really that fussed about reading all these deleted comics because, some of them might just not have seen the light of day because they weren't that good, and that's okay.
I mean, but they were fully produced, though, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah.
Which is why I say, DC isn't losing anything by doing this. They've got them all sitting there anyway. They might as well throw them out like this. Why not? Right? It's easy content.
If anything, they're going above and beyond, but even bothering with the wraparound, I mean, they really could just say, "Hey, it's an anthology of books that never saw the light of day," and just title it that way, and it'd be fine.
I don't think anyone would have complained at that.
No. The fact that they're actually doing a little wraparound with some, kind of an in-ute story reason for seeing these stories is kind of like, you don't really need to do that, but cool,
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's unless there's anything else that I have missed that you want to bring up.
They did give us the list of the teams and stories that are going to be in the Infinite Frontier Zero issue. If anyone's interested in seeing what to expect from that.
Sure.
So they mentioned there's a spine story which they say will be the framing sequence, and that will be Snyder, Tynan, and Williamson, I believe, on that. So that kind of makes sense. They've been spearheading a lot of this stuff. And then Williamson will be writing an epilogue. Unfortunately, that will be drawn by John Romita Jr. Which sucks. But other stories, most of these are the teams that are going to be on the books going forward, but there are a couple of exceptions. So we've got Justice League by Bendis and Marquez.
Mhm.
Batman by Tynan and Jimenez. Wonder Woman by Clunan and Conrad and Martinez and Morales. And what's interesting is Wonder Girl by Joelle Jones and Jordi Belair. So they're using the Wonder Girl name in present day continuity for Yara.
Yeah, we knew that because her book's called Wonder Girl.
Yeah, but just that's being set up in this issue and spinning out of that.
Cool.
What is interesting is Green Lantern Alan Scott by Tynan and Stephen Byrne. And he did say this is going to be a sequel to that Alan Scott story that was in the, I think it was in the Green Lantern 80th.
Yep.
So that's an interesting one.
Cool.
Teen Titans Academy by Tim Sheridan and Rafa Sandoval makes sense. Superman by Philip Kennedy Johnson and Jamal Eagle. Yeah. Green Arrow and Black Canary by Joshua Williamson and Alex Maleev.
Maleev?
Shoot.
Yeah.
Arrow and Black Canary. Now that is interesting.
Now, obviously, they're not announced to be on any book yet. It's possible that there's speculation that there's maybe setting up for something in Bendis' Justice League, especially with the Maleev there, because obviously they're frequent collaborators. But
Well, yeah, and the Leviathan stuff.
yes,
Maleev
exactly.
was doing, so.
Yeah, and that was Green Arrow related.
Yeah,
as well, right?
if anything, it could be setting up because we know we're supposed to get another Leviathan mini at some point, so maybe we're setting up that more than an
It
ongoing.
could be, but I think what's interesting is Williamson's writing this, not Bendis.
Right. Well, I feel like Williamson has become Bendis' protege in a lot of ways, especially since Bendis came to DC. And so a lot of the stuff, I mean, because he's writing the Justice League Future State stuff, Williamson is.
That's true, yeah.
So, like, and then he's taking over Justice League, so I'm sure, and again, if you haven't read Nailbiter, Bendis shows up as a character in an issue. So
It could just be that. It is worth mentioning,
thing.
though, that Williamson doesn't have any ongoings. And well, actually, maybe the Robin book. I think that was him. But
Robin,
he does have. He has said he's got multiple things set up at DC that aren't going to be announced till later in the year. So there's always the chance this could be one of them. That there's a Green Arrow
it could
book
be,
coming.
yeah. We know he's got the Robin, the Damien book, and then he's doing all this Red Hood stuff, both in the anthology and in the Future State one.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a couple of books a month that he's still doing, even in March.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see, because it's been on to spread a Green Arrow book now. It's actually been a couple of years since that book ended, so I'd be very curious to see a new ongoing Green Arrow, and especially if they title it Green Arrow and Black Canary, which would be nice.
Yeah, I'd be all for that. Last couple of stories: Stargirl by Jeff Johns and Todd Nook. Green Lanterns by Jeffrey Thorne and Dexter Soys. That's the ongoing team. And then what's a little bit interesting is The Flash by Joshua Williamson and Howard Porter. And that's the only one here that is looking backwards and not forwards, because all the rest of the books are the upcoming teams. But that's the one, obviously, that's just had.
I'm wondering if this is his actual capper. Like, it wasn't just his final issue. This will be his grand goodbye,
Could be. I think it's interesting how much Williamson has in this issue, because he's part of the Spine story with Tynan and Snyder. He's doing the Green Arrow and Black Canary. He's got a Flash story, and he's got the epilogue story as well, with, unfortunately, Ramita. But, that's presumably separate from these. So that's a lot that he's doing in this issue.
Yeah, and I just remember him being announced for Flash, saying that John's handpicked him, right? And being a little bit familiar with him from his indie work. So, like, it's super cool now that he seems to be one of the premier DC guys.
Yeah, he's up there. It's like him and Tynan are the forefront of this next generation, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah. Along with that Alan Scott story, and maybe to an extent Stargirl, although it feels like any GSA they're setting up is more in the past rather than present day.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on this GSA potential book either from Snyder or Tynan. Like, someone's doing GSA, damn it.
I'm shocked they didn't announce it this week, because I don't know if you saw the next animated movie is the JSA World War II. And they've been releasing like the first trailers all this week. So I'm surprised they didn't time an announcement to coincide with that.
Usually they reveal books on the run up to solicits. The fact that they did a batch of them this week when solicits aren't until next week makes me think that they've got a couple of big things to actually reveal next week before the solicits. So it's entirely possible that anything as big as like a new GSA book, because these announcements are cool, but they weren't huge announcements by any means.
No, they're just adding to the slate though, in a good way. Like you know, they're filling things out, and you know, but they aren't the tentpole books.
But I could see 1 or 2 big books being announced next week before the solicits for me, and maybe GSC will be one of them. I mean, I've been waiting long enough. Go. Come on, DC.
We can live in hope.
And see it through. Don't bungle it like Legion, right? You know, Matt Stillhart.
Yes, please.
or Young Justice as well, because that one, by the sounds of it.
I mean that's true, but I wasn't as like thirsty for Young Justice. Young Justice was a cool idea to bring him back, but I mean there was several Teen Titan things going on.
No, I know you weren't, but I think there were a lot of people excited for Young Justice, and were waiting on that kind of not all of that exact lineup, but that era of teen heroes having their team again. And it doesn't seem to have gone down that well.
Don't worry, there'll be a mini series next week called The Death of Connor Kent, and it'll be delightful.
Well, he's going to Suicide Squad, so it checks out.
Wait, does that mean you're going to be reading Suicide Squad, Matt, so you can read Connor Kent?
No. Negative.
All of Matt's dreams for the first 4 years of this show just got crushed, didn't they?
Legion, Connor. So now I'm just like, hey, I'm going to start focusing on characters I don't like. Like Batman.
That's a great backfire. Batman's going to have his most successful year ever, with the most books ever.
At Connor's urging, I read the new Tynan newsletter, and I'm like, oh, dude, I would love to sit and talk to this guy.
His just the back half of that where he talks about his outline of what he thinks the industry is and where it should go. Is just like, I'm so glad he's getting into a position of not power, but a position to spearhead things at DC in a direction that is moving forwards and not just same old.
Right, not constantly looking back. But then I look at Infinite Frontier, and it kind of flies in the face of a lot of what he said. But at the same time, you have to keep updating because you're DC.
Yeah. Just to play, what he actually said about his Batman stuff is the idea that in this timeline, this is the furthest along Batman has ever been in continuity. This is the oldest Batman has ever been in continuity, not counting Dark Knight, whatever. Right. And he wants to play with that and not just we'll go back, we'll bring Alfred back, we'll do year one stuff again, we'll go back to having all the younger Robin. He wants to push it forwards in new ways, and that's exciting.
Right, and that is good because that's something that I, as a longtime comic fan, as much as I love the nostalgia trips and these smaller characters that show back up and whatnot, I do like the fact that we're not treading on the same things in Batman that we've had over the last 10 years.
Yeah,
that's what I like about Tynan's Batman book. Sometimes as frustrating as it can be, with the whole Ghostmaker stuff, it is kind of new Gotham in a way.
And I think that's why this period where Bruce Wayne's not got money or not as much money, we're setting up the magistrate into the future state status quo. I think it might stick a little bit longer than maybe we're expecting because Tynan is pushing for it, because he's like, no, let's do something completely different with it and not just revert to the Batman status quo. That's exciting.
Right. It is.
I'll always be a supporter of things moving forward. There's nothing more frustrating in comics when things do progress, you like how they've progressed, and then they revert. And one of the vicious cycles we're in is that a lot of those progressions that we did like from before, we want to come back. Not because we want to go back, is that they never finished. It was like
they were heading in a direction that we liked, and we want to see the continuation of that rather than where we've reverted to.
I know that applies specifically to anything here, but I'm almost a little bit worried that in a few years' time, okay, we'll go through a lot of this, and then it'll be like, oh no, back to status quo.
And so he also kind of defended that version of continuity in that these are who the characters are, and yes, if we treat them all like it has happened, then you can keep moving forward instead of having to go back and go, oh no, it didn't happen like that, right? So in the same way that it refutes a lot of the people that don't like continuity because it's too convoluted and it's too, I shouldn't have to read all of this stuff. But at the same time, he's like, well, yes, you don't have to read all that stuff, but you just have to acknowledge that this stuff has happened, right? And that this is who Batman is right now.
The only thing I will say, the only cynical thing, because I like a lot of what this sounds like, but the only cynical thing I'll say is that he has himself very recently committed the trope of inserting stuff into Batman's backstory. That's very important to this new character he's introduced, and move forward. Stop shoving things into the backstory.
Yeah. I think that's a slightly different angle on his idea of looking forward as opposed to backwards. He means like recreating these. Just it's year one again.
I get what he's saying. But I am adding on to this. That equally to me is frustrating because you're trying to shoehorn things into like history that weren't there. Build from scratch.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I think we're all kind of on board on the Ghostmaker being a bit weaker.
Yeah.
Shit. A bit shit.
he's introducing another new character. I think he said the first appearance is technically in 106, but in reality, their story starts in 108.
I don't think I'm shitting on Titan here because I've enjoyed Punchline. I've enjoyed Clown Hunter. A lot of his new characters that I've been fine with.
But it's Ghostmaker's origin. You're very much on the record talking about it's annoying that this is just another character from Bruce's past that's come back to haunt him.
Yeah, someone who was sparring with constantly through his years of training. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, not every new character that he creates can be a big hit. That's fine. But if the majority are, I'll be happy. Because like I say, really happy with Punchline. Clown Hunter's cool. Looking forward to seeing this new one. I'm forgetting the name. I think he did tell us, but
it's Mary Miracle, something like that.
That sounds familiar.
Miracle Mary. Yeah. Well, and he's gonna have this new version of Scarecrow, which I'm not a fan of the design, but I do like what he said, where they're trying to get away just from the baghead version that we got.
He was made a big push to have the hat back and be like, no, this is Scarecrow, not just Batman Begins. With the baghead.
Right, not just Jonathan Crane. Although seeing the syringes on the fingers and the Arkham games kind of design,
that's a very video game.
I'm kind of not a fan of that, but the fact that he says he wants Scarecrow to look something like you would see an actual Scarecrow out in the middle of a field, I think that's pretty cool. And especially Tynan being a horror guy and what that means for that character and the state of fear just tells me like, okay, maybe I'll keep collecting Batman physically. When I wasn't, I was just digital. But now it's kind of like, well,
back in.
Shoot, man. I also, I want to support, I don't know. And I know all the money goes to the same place, right? It all goes to DC.
No, but the reality is they do count physical sales as more valuable than digital, even though they get a higher cut from the digital ones.
Right. I wanted, and me buying a physical book, something that I have to put away and like that takes up space, I guess proves to my own stupid part of myself, it means more, right? That I have like physical Titan books versus ones that just sit in a digital cloud,
I'll defend the syringes on the glove, right, a little bit. And I think at least what the game was trying to do is that because they were treating the sequences more like dream sequences, nightmare sequences, it was intentionally evoking Freddy Krueger. I think that's kind of the point of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like it or not, I think there was at least a strong thematic reason why they made that choice. So it wasn't just willy-nilly, let's just throw syringes in his fingers because it's cool.
No. I'm just saying, as someone I like the more psychological aspects of Scarecrow. Like, one of my favorite Batman stories of all time is where the people in Arkham tell Scarecrow he's not scary anymore, that they know his gimmick. Like, he's been beat up by Batman so many times, no one's afraid of him. And so he becomes like a serial killer and starts killing random people and puts Gotham back on notice. And it's really effective, and he's not wearing his costume. It's like a little 2-issue arc in Detective Comics from like the mid-2000s. I forget the name of it every time.
I think you've spoken about this before a long time ago when we talked about our favorite stories.
Yeah, and it's just like, I just love that concept of Scarecrow as, yes, he is a psychologist. He knows how to weaponize fear. It's not just the gas. Because that was the other thing, is Batman challenges him that he's like, you're too reliant on the gas. And he's like, well, I can do it without it. And so I like that aspect of him too. But then again, syringes are scary, right? Like, especially if you're Connor. So who knows? Pete, have you seen what he looks like, the new Scarecrow?
I haven't actually, no.
Okay, I'll find the picture and throw it up.
Yeah, it says a lot that, don't get me wrong, I think we're all enjoying Future State well enough. There are definitely some good books. Some books we're not enjoying as much, but there are definitely stories we're enjoying. But I think we're all kind of excited and looking forward to getting back to regular continuity as well. And
I think that's always the case with these things. So even when your 1 or 2 month break is good, if the books are good, and they've been obviously mixed, but there's been some really good stuff in there. I think you're always want to just get back to this, get back to the ongoing world. It's always, I always have that feeling. Especially I felt it this week. Even though there's a couple of really good books this week, I really felt it this week because I'm like, okay, we're on month 2 of this now. I'm ready for the world back.
I think that's how, like, a lot of the gimmick months that were in the New 52 every September, they got away with purely because they were 1 month. Don't get me wrong, you often felt it by the end that you were ready to get back to it, but it was 1 month, so you were all right, fine. It's only one issue of each book. I think, you know, this is obviously closer in style to Convergence in that, okay, it's a full 2 month break from everything. Don't get me wrong, this is way better than Convergence. Like, there are a lot of books here that we are enjoying.
There was a lot of cool stuff in Convergence, though, just like, you know, Superman running around like Daredevil, you know, because he didn't have powers, you know, where I feel like here there's a lot of cool stuff too, but I'll be happy when we're back to the norm, you know, like that's fun in small doses. But and then I read Wonder Woman and I was kind of like, okay, this doesn't necessarily have to be future state. That's just a Yara story, right?
You could take that exact story and set it in present day and just tell us it's present day, and we'd be like, sure, fine. Yeah,
there'd be no reason to suspect otherwise.
No.
So on the Scarecrow image that Matt sent me, just because I'm seeing it for the first time, gas mask is cool. The hat looks a bit weird, but I think it's just the angle of this image because it's like from underneath, so it looks like he's got more of a. He's like made like an afro out of straw, which I don't think it actually is. I think it's just the under.
I think it's just because he's looking up at it. Yeah. That's just the brim, essentially, I think, that you're seeing there.
Yeah. Long hair's a bit... I mean, I'm sure it's a wig, but, you know, whatever. The long hair's a bit weird. But, I mean, I kind of like the idea of the gas mask element into the mask.
And I like that the needles on the hands are actually like taped onto or stitched into the gloves. They're not like just on the end of his fingers. They are on top of them. Like, they are there.
Well, and they have tubes running to him, like Bane, you know? Like like Venom. So, but no, it's really cool. From a horror guy like Titan, like, of course he's going to have a Scarecrow story waiting in the, you know, so, but.
Miracle Molly was the name.
Miracle Molly.
Yeah.
There you go.
I just happened to see it right under it was right under the Scarecrow picture.
Yeah. So, but cool.
All right. Well, I think we'll get into some books then at this juncture. So, Future State, the next Batman, issue 3. We'll talk about creators as we go through, because multiple stories. Although I think we all only read 2 out of the 3 stories this time, given that the third story from last month we did not enjoy at all. So, so we'll talk about 2 of the stories in this one. So the main story, of course, continuing the Tim Fox, or is it Jace he wants to be called now?
He wants to be called Jace for some reason. Yes. And I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah. You know. Especially more than ever now that we're seeing that some of this stuff is continuing in some way, and we're getting the origin. Many, of course, that we're going to cover.
I think. Yeah. Anyone else find it kind of interesting the naming of this? Tim obviously is a Robin, and Jace feels like short for Jason,
which is also a Robin.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, and he's kind of a dick. So yeah, I mean, there's. He's not really. I was. It was the only way I could fit Dick into the whole. Charade. All right.
Kind of a spoiler.
It's hard to fit Dick in sometimes.
It's terrible.
Dang it. I tried to get her in. I couldn't make a Steph pun, so I went through other. Don't forget she was Robin.
Yes. And something, son of the Antichrist, therefore Damien, therefore we've completed the circle. Yeah. All right. So the last issue, the last story, or last part of this story ended with there's this couple who'd killed the murderer of their child. The magistrate showed up and they're sort of cornered, which is where this issue picks up straight away, and we get a very extended action sequence of this Batman flying through the robots, dismantling them, ripping things off. Just chaos, throwing electric grenades, I guess we'll call them. It's just letting the art go for it, really.
It looks pretty good. It's worth noting this is Laura Braga as well on the finishes again. We still have the Darrington breakdowns, but we're not back to Darrington like the first issue.
I wonder if the last part will have Darrington back full.
I think so.
kind of hope so.
So
Not that Laura Braga's bad. I actually think it
No.
still looks pretty good. It's just
the action is really well done because it's like a third of the book.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just
with
the
this
bar was set too high in the first issue.
Yeah.
If it had been this the entire time, we'd all be praising it every issue.
yes,
True.
because it's a solid comic book art. The big thing though is that the mustache man, from the magistrate,
Yeah, mustache man.
mustache man, he gets grilled by Magistrate 1, Peacekeeper 1, who is like, wait, why didn't you shoot first? Why did you identify yourselves? What part of shoot on sight are you not following here? And Mustache Man at least is like, well, we should at least identify. I mean, that feels like at least at the very least before we start shooting people, give them a chance to surrender. And he just grills them for it and tells them to get out there and don't come back to me until you're wearing Batman's cape soaked in blood, which is pretty great. This one sets up a bit more of the supporting because we get Renee Montoya and some of the other detectives, and one detective in particular that Tim ends up calling because he wants to turn the couple in to have a trial because he's like, they did murder someone. He doesn't want to let them just go away. They're not innocent, but he doesn't want, if the peacekeepers get them, they're just dead. So he wants to try and arrange a proper exchange to the police, so they're going to be taken into custody. After getting their help healing his wounds because he's been shot,
he makes him stick a flare against his open wound. That sounds painful.
Yeah, but
so metal.
The big cliffhanger though is that the husband decides he doesn't want to be taken in and attacks him at the end of the issue and tries to strangle him. So that's kind of where the big cliffhanger comes.
They'll never take me alive. Oh man.
And his logic is, well, if we kill Batman, they'll maybe give us a pass.
Right.
And
yeah,
I understand why he's come to that conclusion. Obviously, I'm not saying he's right, but
well, yeah, in the context of this world where killing capes and whatnot, it seems to be a very, and that's the other thing we get here is Lucius and his wife, and fascinating sort of seeing why Lucius feels the way he does now about people in masks. It's
it makes me wonder what happened to Tam, because Tam was working with Batwoman, right? That was her. That was
Alfred's niece or whatever.
That was Alfred's. Okay.
Yeah.
Where did Tam come? Because I remember Tam has worked with them before.
Maybe in the Batwing stuff.
Maybe it was the Batwing stuff. So she worked with her brother.
I think so.
So she's been close to it too. So whatever happened enough, it kind of turned Lucius. And even though I like his wife talking about like, look, I like this law, I don't like how they're enforcing it, which is an interesting take.
Well, it's interesting that the daughter then, after this argument, when the wife comes out, says, like, you really support this cops just shooting on sight law, and she's like, no, this is different. It's like, oh yeah, it's never different. It's just different for us, and it's a really interesting argument here.
That is kind of her point, though, that she supports the idea of the law against anti-vigilantism. She just doesn't like the shoot on sight part of it. She wants apprehension.
Right.
Yeah, but
I like the dynamic between them though, just because of how that works.
But the sister does go to Luke and says, "Hey, just fess up. Are you Batman? Like, seriously, like you're basically killing our parents over this. They're constantly fighting about what to do, and it's Batman's fault." And he's like, "Look, it's not me. I've not been wearing a mask. Because like, I promise, nothing to do with
he's
me."
like, "Look, I've been there, and whoever it is, they're good people."
Yeah, he sticks up for him, which is interesting because we know how he feels about his brother.
Right, as he just in the panel before, or whatever he calls himself, he's not helping being around, or being around, he isn't helping at all.
Yeah.
So out of the two words, both sides of his mouth, although unknowingly. So, but I think that's hilarious.
That's classic secret identity stuff, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's impressive about all this is that it's getting me invested in the status quo of this book and this world, and sometimes when they try and force new characters, they try and force new versions of Batman or new versions of Superman or whatever, I very quickly just get a distaste for it. This is just proof that if it's actually a well-written story that doesn't kind of betray some of the core elements of what it is, it can work, and it can draw you in. You can kind of start to care about this version of things.
It's why I'm so interested in Gotham going forward. And so, we know they're setting up the Magistrates, this stuff, and Peacekeeper 1, and that's going forward in the main Batman title. We've got this digital first origin story for this Batman, and we've got a Future State Gotham book coming that'll still delve into this world. It feels like we're tackling this from a handful of different directions, and we're going to get a complete story by the end. And
you have to imagine that there's going to be a story about this Batman in that Gotham book, and at that point, I also think, I mean, assuming Dark Detective doesn't end with Bruce being killed properly, that eventually Bruce and this Batman are going to be face to face, and whatever comes of that meeting.
So
yeah, that's like a whole arc in that book.
Tynan also brought up how he's going to use Peacekeeper 1, so it also makes me wonder what's going on with Peacekeeper 1.
And who is it?
We've been speculating about the identity before this, and I'm wondering now, maybe we won't learn because it's going to be something in the main Bat book, in the next few months. Yeah.
Or alternatively, I could totally see it being the cliffhanger at the end of this. Like, at the end of part 4 could be, this is who it is, and that's why you're like, oh, this is why you care about the origin.
I'm actually really interested to see how much closure they give these series now, because now we're kind of aware they're going to start tying back in and leading towards this, and they're going to have books set in the Future State world still. I wonder how much they feel the need to tie this up neatly, or if they feel like they can just leave it open, and we'll get back to that. We'll pick up that cliffhanger later in another book.
Yeah,
because it felt like such a contained event originally when they announced it, but the closer we get to the end, the more it feels like, no, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be mined from this for at least the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of feels like Days of Future Past in that way, where Days of Future Past was started off as a piece of a story, and then as other creatives started coming to it, it started to create its own lore within the X-Men stuff. And we know Tynan's a huge X-Men fan.
Yeah.
Right? So it almost makes you wonder if that's kind of his take with, like, I'll take stuff that was happening in Future State and roll into it, right, or if it was the reverse.
You're suggesting
he had the idea.
He did, his X-Men, Detective Comics run, and now he's doing his Days of Future Gotham. Is that what you're saying?
That's kind of what it feels like, just because, the whole Days of Future Past launched, like, the whole stuff with, like, Bishop and time travel with the X-Men, and
what's so interesting is we thought he did Days of Gotham Past in the
Future Bats.
Yeah, that story that we
with
had.
Tim.
That was a test. This is the real deal. This is the big.
Yeah, but
Matt, you make.
Yeah, it's just funny that we thought we'd done it. We thought he'd got it out of his system, and then he's like, "No, I can do better than that."
Yeah, but with the Days of Future, that was mainly just a fun play on words. With this, though, this feels like that dystopic future that, we can prevent, right? We're going to give you a piece of it and show you how bad it gets, and then I'll show you how it unfolds and when it can be undone, because I feel like that's where he's going to go.
It's interesting because the Gotham stuff of Future State feels like a genuine, inevitable conclusion of where we're going to get to with Gotham comics in the next few years.
Right.
In a way that no other Future State books do feel like most of them feel like, this could happen. It's a possible future. Whereas this does feel like, no, we can get to this quite easily.
And in most cases with the other ones, I don't even want them to ever get there. And in most, because a lot of the other ones, it's like, okay, it's a possible future, but I'm happy for them to forget this and just continue their, better ongoing, future, present day stuff. Like, they forget about what Future State set up, but it's fine. And like you say, Yara Flor, like, I mean, that could be set present day. I mean, that's the reason why it isn't.
They're telling us it's not, and the fact that she's Wonder Woman in this Future State book and Wonder Girl in the present day means there is stuff before this story that we're seeing right now.
Which tells me she's even more of a mess now. So I the whole Kate Bishop vibes, I was, I attributed to her. Making her Wonder Girl now.
Well, that's the thing. Like, obviously,
ramp that up a little more.
Obviously, it's the future when she's in Superman, Wonder Woman, because she's with John Superman. Right. It's and same with Justice League, but I think her book on her own, like, you could tell me, that one we called it Future State, but really it's actually quite early in the story.
That's what's so interesting to me. If you look at DC's timeline that they published, the Wonder Woman Future State book with her is actually set after the Superman Wonder Woman book, for example, and I think after the Justice League one as well.
I hate the timeline. I wish they didn't publish that stupid thing.
I just wanted to do the Ron Burgundy gift where I don't believe you. Like,
It doesn't feel like it. It
No.
feels closer to Origin than it does to that. You know,
I'm
fully
sick
formed
of
hero.
people telling me, mostly Connor, oh, but on the official timeline is here. I don't. Go away. I don't care. DC shut.
None of it's gonna matter
DC.
later.
Yeah, none of it
You know.
matters. Not really.
I get
Just
it.
let me love Yara Flor. That's all.
I mean, I could still do that regardless of where it is in the timeline.
You can't stop me.
All
I feel like we're
right.
going to be very positive about that book.
What we rating this story in next Batman, Matt?
I'm giving it an 8.
Connor.
Yeah, it's an 8 from me as well.
I will concur with the 8. Very solid. There we go. Good stuff. And we also, of course, read the Outsider story, which is a continuation of Katana, Black Lightning, and Duke. And Black Lightning's a living, piece of lightning, effectively right now.
I love the whole living lightning concept.
Just before we go on, you should say Brandon Thomas and Sumit Kumar, art and writing and art on this story.
Yes. Well, it wasn't on the first page, so I got to it when we got to the credits page. So, yeah, this the first half of the book is effectively a speech that Duke's given, and they kind of paint him as being someone who's a bit of a political figure now, who tries to, gain a following, sort of resistance, all that kind of stuff.
Is anyone getting weird White Knight vibes?
A little bit.
Like it took like they took that concept of what they did with Duke in that book and went, we can do better than that, and kind of make it more Duke.
This is the most I've ever liked the character of Duke, and I feel like this is him being the signal. I feel this is what they were going for, right? Where he is the light in the dark that is Gotham, and here now he's using that as, hey, I'm on the outside, but I'm going to inspire people here so we can make change in there. And I really like that approach. So this whole speech of him, and it's intercut with him, I feel like he's giving the speech not here to these people, but it's similar.
No,
right?
it's
a bigger, grander.
No, it's not. You see at the end where the speech was. It's a recording from a speech he gave to a crowd. It's not a speech he's given to these 3 people. So he's got,
feels like a crowd speech the whole time.
He's got these 3 people in a safe house. We know from the last issue that one of them is actually a double agent, right, for the magistrate. So it's building up to that. It's cutting between that and Katana and Black Lightning, and she's asking, what happened to you? And he kind of just sort of dodges the question, which tells me that backup that's coming in whatever one of the Bat books.
It's I think it's just part of the anthology.
Oh, the anthology, whatever one it is. I've got a feeling that may be tapping into some of this shit.
I think they mentioned he was like it was a curse of some sort, right?
He mentions it's magic, but he doesn't really go into it. He very much sidesteps a lot of the actual specifics.
Yeah.
But most notably, he actually, with his powers now, reassembles her sword, as well as her new sword, and infuses... Basically, in fact, not even just does that, but kind of becomes the swords. He becomes her 2 lightning swords, one of which was the one with the dead husband, and one's the new one. So she ends up with these 2 lightning swords.
Getting real Lord of the Rings vibes from the reforged sword thing here.
So Duke sets up people in the safe house, he runs off, but he's smart enough to know, and something's a bit fishy about how easy the bridge thing was last issue, that he's put trackers on them. Immediately the guy who is the culprit comes after him, and he's got augmentation, sort of cyberpunk style. He's got a robotic eye, metal in his legs, and
And he's talking about how once he turns him in, he can do more, which again gives it do more augmentations, which gives it more of that cyberpunk vibe that we've been getting.
Yeah, he's straight up
Dark Detective.
He's straight up a Deus Ex Machina kind of character. Yeah, I just said Deus Ex. I meant Deus Ex, like Human Revolution, and Mankind Divided.
Right.
But the video games, in case everyone doesn't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so basically, Duke's on the run from this guy, or chasing down this guy, because he doesn't want this guy to get back and actually give the information that he's collected. He calls in Katana. Katana brings Jefferson, of course, and her swords. And one of the things we loved the most about that last part of this was the action. And when it gets to the bridge and it's the bike chases, Katana's on one bike, Duke's on the other. They're chasing down this guy who's running quite fast because, again, he's got augmented, cyborg legs. And then Caliber shows up in a tank. Well, maybe more of a SUV. but with guns.
Yeah, but it's like a tank.
Yeah.
So you're forgiven for that.
It's a heavily modified vehicle. Either
Yes.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just all this, and you got Katana running with her big electric sword, and there's a great full page spread where she slices down the vehicle. And what I love about this, the detail on this page, because obviously the motion and the layouts of all of this is fantastic. It flows so well like last issue did. But my favorite thing about this is that if you look at the vehicle that's been split in half behind her, that she just went through with her sword, you can see the guy in the driver's side and the passenger side both falling out into the middle, where there's now just a gaping hole. It's a nice touch.
You can see all the. I think there's 3 people that you can see falling. Like one's grabbing onto one side, one's on the left, and one's above her.
Yeah, the one above, I think he was like up on the gun or something up top. Yeah, and he's flying in the air. So Caliber actually gets the hold of the lightning sword, and he's about to break it. He's about to snap it again. But Jefferson just sort of goes supernova and fries him.
He's having none of it
as best he can. So we get this big gorgeous page of the silhouette of him stabbing Caliber, and the blue lightning. Everything's there. I think what I like about this as well is there's some interaction between Jefferson and Duke, where he feels like a proud dad. Like when he hears about him doing his speeches and he's become a bit of a leader, he's like, oh, good for him. And the book actually ends with him going off with Duke, with the new sword. Katana keeps the old one, and we hear the end of the speech as Duke walks up to the city border. All the magistrate soldiers are like, "Oh, look who it is! Come any closer and we'll shoot." And the final page is this full page spread of Jefferson kind of coming out of the sword and standing next to him, and Duke's just like, "Shoot then." And that's the end. But now that we know we're getting more Gotham stuff, it feels like there's a lot to continue here. Should and when they want to.
It does. We know we're going to get a story set earlier in the timeline than this in the anthology book.
Right.
But yeah, maybe after we get that Red Hood arc, there's going to be an Outsiders arc in the Future State book. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, not at all.
Follow on from this.
Especially, dude, he comes in when Duke crosses that bridge, and he's wearing the sword across his back. I got big Final Fantasy vibes.
No, I get that. It's the shape of the sword. It's the it's the point at the end that makes it look like a cloud sword. Yeah,
and he's just hands behind his back, calm as can be, just walking in there, and then to have Living Lightning Jeff is just it's so cool.
He's just strolling in his jacket.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Nah, I got this."
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's neat. And then, because at the end, when you hear the rest of this speech, you realize where it's come from. It's the 2 people who are actually not, the 2 people in the safe house who weren't the bad guy, who are just watching one of his speeches on YouTube or whatever. And then the speech is, I'm Duke Thomas, I'm the Signal. We'll take back Gotham City. We can keep fighting, that sort of thing. It's really solid. It's another part of the corner, and it's characters. Duke's a relatively new character, but even Jefferson and Katana, they're not exactly characters who were getting their fair share of time in comic books for the longest period there. So it's kind of nice that these literal kind of like oddballs, dare I say outsiders, are getting a chance to kind of shine a little bit.
I think it's safe to say Katana is better on the Outsiders than she ever was on the Suicide Squad for a few years.
Oh, for sure.
Well, that's
obviously
why
that's the thing. She's been a pretty consistent presence in comics for the last decade or so between those teams, but she was just kind of there on the Suicide Squad.
Well, she never felt like she belonged on the Suicide, even as like a, you need a couple good guys to keep them in line.
I think that was kind of the point, right? She was meant to be like the supervisor.
And I was like, that's not her though. Like she's with Batman, and Batman tells her, no, you're not gonna be lopping off dudes' heads here. So
I mean,
it's always so weird.
I conceptually get the idea of we need a good character or 2 in the Suicide Squad to keep the rest of them in line, but I think the sad part is that with the exception of when Suicide Squad happens to be good, which unfortunately, other than the Tom Taylor book, we've not felt that case in a long time.
By the way, they're collecting all in one single hardcover, so should all get that.
Well, to finish my sentence, rude. But to finish my sentence, ultimately we're not happy when someone's saddled with the Suicide Squad. It doesn't even matter. Technically, the concept of why they're there might be fine, but ultimately, they're saddled with the Suicide Squad team. So it just means I'm not going to get to read them for a couple of years, if not many years. So, Nice.
Pretty much, yeah.
But
No, this was a great story. My only critique or complaint is that it bothered me that there was a panel. It was when he was talking, Duke was talking to the the three people in the apartment. He's like, all right, I'm leaving you all this stuff, clothes, whatever. And he mentions walking around money. And then in the same dialogue, bubble, it says, but don't leave this place. Why did you give him walking around money then? Like, use that phrase.
Right.
Like that seems like such a weird thing to give them if you're telling them to stay in here.
Well, when it says to leave this place, maybe it means you can go to the little shop down the street. You can go there for supplies.
Right.
I got the impression he meant don't leave this apartment, like this building, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, you must be. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me. That was my complaint. That's why it bothered me.
And the cross is still missing. Still missing to this day.
Look, if you were going to bring that up, you should have done it in the last story where they were actually in a goddamn church.
All right, Matt, what would you like to rate this story?
I'm gonna give this one 8.5. It's thoroughly enjoyable, and I just love the Outsiders.
Higher than the main one. That's interesting. Connor?
I'm lining up exactly with Matt on both stories, apparently.
I don't like this.
Also an 8.5. It won't last, don't worry.
I'll probably go just with straight 8 again, I think, for me on this one. But really good stuff. So we can't really rate the book as a whole per se, although when we're ranking at the end, we still kind of have to consider it as is.
We'll give it still a number. We did in all the other books, but we didn't read everything.
I mean, I guess. But what other books did I not read everything in?
Well, maybe you didn't, but me and Matt often didn't read all the stories, and we still gave it numbers.
Yeah, 'cause remember we averaged it out of the two.
Sure, okay. Well, fine. I mean...
So I'll just give this one an 8.
All right, there you go. Connor.
Yeah, see?
Also giving it an 8.
I will also give... I mean, I give both stories an 8. Why wouldn't I give the whole thing an 8? I mean...
Connor's like, actually, it's a 6.
Yeah, I mean, look, that last story was so bad. Even though I didn't read it, I have to drag it down multiple points.
I thumbed through it and went, this is not for me.
I literally didn't even do that. I
Yeah.
closed the issue as soon as I got to the end of this story. I was like, okay, I'm done.
Oh, man.
All right. Future State of Superman and Metropolis issue 2. I think Matt's the only one who read this, so...
Yeah.
Did you not read it?
I had to read Flash, so that just crossed this one off the list.
Did you read it, Connor?
No, I said last week I wasn't going to read it because
Gotcha.
I didn't really like the main story in the first issue. The only thing I really liked from it was the Mr. Miracle bit, and that's not enough to move.
I was vaguely curious how the story was going to wrap up, but not enough because it was a really dense read last time, so I just didn't have time. So go on, Matt. Tell us about it. What happened?
So it starts with him and Brain Cells are up on the ship, and Brain Cells has kind of created like a organic area to keep like the city alive, and that he's like conserving it. And then John realizes how much of a mistake this actually was, that he just kind of played into his hands, and that he's going to protect Metropolis, not Brain Cells. And then so they get to fighting, and Brain Cells ends up creating clones of Superman, but from the different eras, which is really cool. So there's 4 of them that he ends up having to fight, and one of them's the Golden Age Superman, and then you have the the next, like the 50s era, because he mentions the Red Scare, and then there's the Superman that died fighting Doomsday, and then the Superman that died in Reborn. So the one that was from Rebirth.
Oh yeah.
And and they're all faceless, so they're just like the costumes on a faceless,
Oh, so you've got that one last one without the red trunks.
Yeah. And so they're all fighting. He fights, and Kara wakes up in the fortress with the Helix robots all around, and she has more of a personality change than from the first one, from the first issue, and she kind of comes to terms with like, I not in the right headspace. But she goes off to save John, to help John, not necessarily save. But as John's fighting these versions of his dad, is that he kind of has this realization, like, being Superman's son seems like an easy thing, but you're always going to be in his shadow, no matter like, and that's not because of Superman. It's because you're Superman's son. Like just the public perception. And that's his big issue here. The whole reason that he, tried to save Metropolis in this way was it's kind of the opposite of what his dad would do. And because he has to define himself. And he's, come to terms while he's getting his butt kicked with brain cells there. So he gets brain cells to charge up the neurodium, which is that, the synthetic kryptonite. That's kind of the same deals.
I'll be honest. I'd forgotten that it was even called brain cells in this, and that made me chuckle because I was like, that's just a stupid name. Yeah, no, it is. But basically, that's, that takes out the Superman. But, Kara starts flying through space with the, basically the enlargement gun that they were using, like the cannon from, well, you don't know, but in action when they shrunk the Invisible Mafia, right? So she has that, and it ends up getting destroyed. But so she comes in while John's finishing off the whole brain cells fight. And I'm trying to remember. It's one of the first things I read this week. But basically, she ends up helping John basically talk brain cells into this. And they re-enlarge the city, right? He takes the city, puts it back over there, and realizes that I'm sorry is not going to be enough. So no shit.
Yeah. And that, so it's, actions, not words. So as, he goes into the city, he starts fixing things. He starts putting stuff back. He's, he's fixing the pipes. He's going through, there's floods. So he starts clearing the water. And then it ends with, him making the commitment that he's Jonathan Kent, the Superman of Metropolis, as the crowd kind of starts to look up at him like he's his dad. So now he's kind of achieved that, I feel like the whole point of the story was him coming to terms with being Superman's son, and that he's not going to ever be his dad, but being his best, he'll get close. And so, it ends with the people looking up at him. So I enjoyed it. It's not like, as I was reading it, I was like, this definitely feels like one of those during like Connor brought up earlier, Convergence. Like there's some cool stuff at play here, but I hope this is not what the Superman books are going to focus on. And I'm pretty sure because this is John and not Clark.
It kind of feels like DC
we're safe.
Doesn't want John to be Superman in a lot of ways, and that this is kind of a showcase of why he shouldn't be in some regards.
Kind of.
I mean, even just ignoring that, the fact that the ongoing writer for both books is in the other Superman book, which has got a completely different style and focus and everything, I feel like you're probably okay. You're safe here.
I think it doesn't technically contradict this book, the other one.
No.
But it has a lot more heart and understanding of Superman that leaves me hope.
Yeah. So, but no, just this whole thing with him coming to terms, and then Kara apologizing. I kind of skipped over that too. When she shows up with the ray gun, the shrink ray, just like she's like, yeah, that's kind of out of character for me. So I don't know if that was like a mea culpa from the writer being like, yeah, in that first issue she wasn't written right. Let me try to fix it.
Yeah, I felt that a little bit in the issue. So
yeah, but just the way it ends, and then it's the John Timms art, which I enjoy his version of John, because it is kind of the fusion of Superman and Connor that we got his Connor throughout Young Justice. So and I just feel like it fits with the action at play here, like him fighting all the different versions of his dad is a real fun sequence. So but yeah, this story's kind of, I don't want to say forgettable, but just, I'm trying to come up with a nicer word than that. It's kind of expendable in that. Is that worse? But I still enjoyed what I read. Like, I'm not upset that I read it. It's just,
I'm glad the art's decent still, because John Timms is doing the spine story in the Infinite Frontier Zero issue.
Yeah, Timms is good. So I'm gonna give this a 7 out of to rate it, and then I can move on to the Mr. Miracle story, which anticlimactic considering that we got like basically part 3 before we got part 2. So
that's annoying. It's the funny thing is when we get to that other Superman Worlds of War book, like maybe I'll still read Mr. Miracle, but part of me feels like I don't know. I've only read parts 1 and 3. I feel weird reading part 4 now that I've skipped part 2.
I'll probably still read it because I've already seen. I already read 3 and enjoyed 3. I might as well read 4. That's the one that follows on directly. 2, yeah, right. 2's clearly the most skippable part.
Because you skipped it and didn't notice.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is Brandon Easton and Valentine Delandro on art. And it continues Shiloh Norman trying to escape through Metropolis. His mother box is, depleting its energy. He does some fun tricks where like he ends up initiating what's it called? I'm trying to find it. A light pulse, which ends up scattering like his image across a spectrum, almost like a light, like a sun ray through a raindrop. So it confuses these robots that he's been fighting. And he ends up coming across this guy that we see early on in the book that's wearing, like a bandana and a hat, and telling him, hey, I'm glad you're here. Because we see that this dude is painting Superman S's all over the city. And so he talks to him about, all the weird stuff that's going on here. Robots show up and start knocking him around. He goes through and realizes, like, if he uses the rest of his power in the mother box, he might be able to break through this barrier, but then it's spent. So he decides he's going to try it anyways. And he takes out all the robots, doesn't pierce the shield though. But when they ask he asks the mother box what the material is that's surrounding the city, it responds that it's Kryptonian. And as that comes through, he gets boom tubed out, which I'm assuming what leads to Warworld in part, whatever the next one is in
But
part 3.
it's really been that difficult to put part 2 in Worlds of War issue 1 and then part 3 in Superman and Metropolis issue 2?
My only assumption is they wanted to keep these parts that are set in Metropolis in the Metropolis book and the ones that are set on Warworld in the Warworld book.
Right.
Because it's like they're avert to doing part 1 of a backup in one book and then part 2 of a backup in another book because they're doing it right away with Superman in action when we get...
I mean, even this, they're doing it part 1 and part 3 in a different book.
Yeah. So I just... It's a weird choice. Yeah. It's weird that you can buy the book, get part 3 and go, oh shit, I shouldn't read this yet because part 2's not out yet.
For another 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was at the time. Yeah.
So he gets boom tubed out. And then turns out the guy that was spray painting is Jimmy Olsen. And, he's, the S is watching. So this one, the art is great. I mean, just like last time. There's like when he splits his image with the light, it looks really cool. Like it's very, because of the way that it's colored, it gave me Mr. Miracle, Tom King, Garrett's vibes, just with the way that it's colored and drawn. You have the thick lines here that make it, different than the Garrett stuff. But the story, I guess, is just okay. Like, again, I don't think not knowing him ending up in Warworld would change this because it's just, him fighting robots and then trying to get out of the bubble. And then, okay, the robots caught up with me. So it's just very repetitive. So I'll give this one a 6. Which leads to the Guardian story, which is by Sean Lewis and Coley Hamner, which I always want to say Hammer, but the M
that's all right.
N.
Pete usually does.
Gotcha. But yeah, so
I'll say Hammer if I want to say Hammer. All right.
It's not his name. He doesn't like it.
So, anyways, Guardian ends up in the West River, south of Metropolis University. And the what's her name? Honest. Let me find it. I think it's Honest.
I'll be honest. This was the least memorable part of that first issue because everything else you've spoken about so far
Mm-hmm.
I've at least followed along with. I'm like, yeah, okay, I remember pretty well what everything was.
Yeah.
This Guardian story, I remember reading it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what happened at all in that first issue.
So I remember going into this one, I didn't refresh. I remembered that the Honest Mary had Jimmy on top of the globe, right, and then on the top of the Daily Planet.
You remember more than me, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and that she was going to basically execute him live on Twitch or whatever. And so Guardian ended up in the river. He gets saved by this group of people, and they give him his stuff, and you find out that they're all from different like boroughs of Metropolis, and they've come together to try to figure out how to fix the city while they're in, the bubble still, and that, each of them bring their own different expertise. So, one of them knows that the firehouse and Baker line has nets, so they could surround the building, and then one of the other guys says that the school science lab was working on a project with Star Labs. We got a climbing pack, which ends up being like 2 Doc Ock arms, that allow Guardian to get up there when he needs to. And then Suicide Slum has a police outpost. One of the people brings up that they can send the emergency signals, and there's a communication studio in Hell's Gate, so they can get the message out and whatnot. So Guardian suits up with people in Metropolis, and people of Metropolis have gathered around the building, to witness what's going to happen with Jimmy Olsen. But Guardian climbs up there with the climbing pack, ends up getting up there and just knocking the shit out of Honest Mary, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because he doesn't even hesitate. It's almost like Nick Cage in the bear suit in Wicker Man, just running up. And
Not
so
the reference I was expecting today.
No. So she goes to take Jimmy out, knocks him out of his chair. Guardian leaps while he's still anchored. Of course, saves him, but she blows up the Daily Planet globe and gets away. But, the people of Metropolis have come together, and that's the whole point of each 4 of those from the different areas, and they end up finally catching her, and Guardian comes and arrests her. And then right as this starts to resolve, they're like, okay, well, we'll start trying to get back to normal as best as we can. And Jimmy starts, pie shakes for everybody. And this is not how bad this issue was, but this is what stuck out the most, was this little interaction between Guardian and Jimmy, where Guardian's like, pie shakes. He's like, yeah, I invented them. You put an entire pie into the blender. And it's like the most Jimmy Olsen that he's been in these issues, kind of the Jimmy that I got used to in the Maxi series, with like kind of the non sequiturs. But as they're resolving everything, that's where John comes through, and it shows a different angle of him saying that he owes them an apology, and the people of Metropolis who are all gathered already, start to celebrate that Superman's back. I'll give this one a 6 as well, just because like Connor brought it. It's not that memorable, and I had to definitely go through the issue again to remember what exactly had happened. Art's fine. Hamner's art tends to be okay, but it's a little bit better when it's more like street level, like his question stuff that he had done with Rucka during Convergence, weirdly, was like some of my favorite I've seen from Cully Hamner. So so this book as a whole, 7 and 2 6s. I'll give it a 6.5.
Solid logic. I can't really fault it that much.
No.
Yeah. There you go. Superman Metropolis issue 2. And much better news though. Future State Wonder Woman issue 2. Joelle Jones, of course, on the writing and the art here, and we ended with the cliffhanger of the Cerberus waking up. Mm-hmm. Which she diffuses with a bone, as you do with many dogs.
Not just any bone though. She goes and takes the ferryman's arm to play catch.
She uses her ball of lasso.
Yeah.
Yep. And then hijacks. Kapora doesn't come though. gives us some advice on our journey, but doesn't come. And I don't think did the first issue ever actually make it very clear exactly who she was looking for, or
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, it just said someone that was close to her. I think it was just a friend or a partner. They didn't actually make it clear at any point.
Yeah, but she falls down to the pits of hell, and I have to say, like, the art when Hades, this interpretation of Hades shows up, is next level stuff, and I think.
Oh, thank God! I thought you were going to criticize it. Then I was like,
no,
better not.
Well, no, here's the thing: when it comes to dealing with mythological stuff like this, I always prefer when it feels otherworldly and big and scary and almost incomprehensible, because that's how it should feel. Once you start sort of nailing it down exactly what it is, I kind of feel like it robs it of all mystique. And this is kind of, it's mystique. He's, it's all shadowy figures, and he's intimidating, tall.
He's
scary.
Eyes. He looks like, I don't know how much like supernatural stuff you guys are, aware of, but like the whole concept of shadow people, that are just out of the corner of your eye.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes people feeling sleep paralysis feel them. That's the vibe I was getting from this Hades.
I love that the lettering for him as well is huge, just to show how it gives the impression of a big booming voice because he's so big.
I'm not sure I understand.
Jeez.
The computers are rebelling.
I was talking. Yeah.
The computers don't understand shadow people, apparently.
No, not at all. That was weird, because usually the watch only goes off when I pull it up to my mouth to talk, like Dick Tracy, right? That just went rogue. So I'm gonna have to do a cleansing.
Even before Hades shows up, though, she's fallen in front of the judges.
Yep.
Who we got Minos there for sure. I'm not sure who the others meant to be at this point, because the thing in Greek mythology is that the judges can change depending on who's there at any given time. People can be elevated to that position.
Right.
Yeah, and then of course Persephone is very bright red with the flowers, very different to everything else in the surroundings.
I love the glow that surrounds her. Like the background just completely fades away, and you get just like a pink glow. Like, because even a lot of the background has the kind of the pop art dots that are used. They're a recurring thing in the issue in general, but directly around her they're gone, or they're completely faded at least. And it is just that pinky red aura that just shows the light that she's bringing through.
Yeah, who convinces Hades to let Yara actually look for the lost soul that she's looking for. And I think one of the effective things about the art is, particularly when she's in the sea of hands of the lost souls looking for, we eventually get this sort of flashback. She has to think of the final moments with this person, who turns out to be a fellow, I don't know if it's literal sister or just sister in the sense of, each Amazonian
sister. Yeah. Like Diana calls all of them sisters. So
yeah, that's why I wasn't sure exactly, but certainly someone she's close to, of the Amazons, and it's her death. It's where she's fallen off a cliff and Yara's trying to lift her up, but there's someone going to stab Yara from behind. So she makes this choice. The sister makes this choice to jump back and throw her spear up and kill the attacker, but it does mean falling to her death, and that's kind of this tragic. There's all this sort of watercolor red looking art. It's really different from the rest of it.
And it's why Yara is here and feels so guilty. She died saving her, and it's why she's come on this quest to get her back.
And you've got that really demonic thing when she does get her back and she pulls her out the pit. That again, going back to Hades, that red and black scream, that panel is wonderful. What I love about the art at this point, though, and they're fighting these weird like shadow demon spider things that are chasing them, is that everything in the background is all these blacks and dark blues and grays, and it's these and the spiders themselves are just pitch black. There's no detail on them; they're just shadows.
Just the occasional red eyes,
kind of like Hades himself. Is that her costume is still very detailed and colorful, so both of them always stand out. And it's interesting that the sister, and as well we see the rest of the sort of like their Amazons at the end of the issue, they all have the exact same color scheme. They have different sort of variations of what the outfit is in terms of what it covers, where there's parts where there's not.
The blue, red, and gold.
Yeah, it's always the same color scheme, but the colors pop on her so much against all these backgrounds when they're running out of this cave system.
So I'm really intrigued by the sound effect they use for the spiders, because they use like a plucker. And I've never seen that before. It's always a clicking sound usually.
Yeah.
That's pretty unique, and I'm like, I like that. I'd like to see more comics with the spider hordes use the plicker.
Okay, more plicking for Connor.
Yeah.
But her sister gets stuck beneath a sort of cave in, like rocks come down and trap her.
She is still like halfway through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she has to have this.
It's also, it reminded me of the story of Morpheus.
Yeah.
Or Orpheus.
Orpheus.
And yeah, where they tell him you could go and get your wife from the underworld, but you can't look back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember this being in the Matrix. What are you talking about?
No,
Orpheus.
He goes down to get Eurystheus, I think her name is, who is his muse. And basically Hades says, all right, fine, she'll follow you out of the underworld. You just have to climb, 1,000,000 stairs, whatever it is. And when you get out, she'll be there with you. She'll be right behind you the whole time. But if you look back, she'll be stuck here forever.
Yeah.
And the idea is he goes, most of the way. He gets right to the end, thinking, she's not there. He can't hear her at any point. He looks back right just before he gets to the exit, and of course she was there the whole time. But now he's looked back, so she's stuck there, and that's the price that he has to pay.
And yeah, so just the whole, that's Hades' like go-to trick, you know. So here he adds a collapse onto it too, but
it's the idea that you can get close to the exit. The hope is the worst part.
Yep.
That's why he gets off on the suffering almost of letting them think they're going to succeed, and then ultimately pulling it away from them, because once the souls are his, they're his, and it's very rare for any soul to get out of the Greek underworld.
Yeah, I mean, we have the heartful goodbye again. She has to essentially say goodbye again. Again, like she already did this once with the falling to her death, and her sister's actually fairly happy about it, in the sense that like you get to live, you get to go and be better.
Yeah. Accepting is probably a better word than happy. But...
Yeah. I mean, but like so but they are here as Yara's pulled away by her sisters, who are pulling her out of hell, and you just see like the sister she was trying to save, just the like the colors from her outfit are fading, and they're almost just as grey as the rocks that are surrounding her, as the crash is happening at the bottom of that page, and then Yara's just yelling and crying in front of everyone. And even actually the rocks as well at the side of the cave making a skull, also a nice touch.
Yeah, it makes the Hades face essentially. Because the entrance to the underworld. That's such a nice touch.
Yep. What I kind of liked here is our Pegasus shows up, Jerry, and sort of cheers her up a little bit. But when that happens, like all the other Amazons are all gone, and I was wondering, like, were they literally there, or was that more of a spiritual thing of like them pulling her out, but they're not really physically there?
I mean, that could be.
I think you can take it either way, because it completely fades away for when the Pegasus comes in. So you could take it as they were there, and now the Pegasus here. It's almost like there's a bit of a time jump after she's been sat there crying for however long, and the Amazons have left her.
Which is a bit cruel. They just left her sitting there crying. That's a bit on the cold side.
I think it's more just they felt like maybe she had to deal with her grief alone. Maybe it was understanding rather than cruel.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and so some of the stuff, some of the narration talks about how humans started telling stories, because once they learned, it's like they used to be the whim of the gods, whether or not it was warm or cold, but then they developed fire, or they're not developed. Sorry, one of the
whether or not it was Prometheus that gave it to them.
Right.
I actually think it's really interesting, this narration at the end, because the whole time it's been in the Wonder Woman font, right? With the yellow background, and at the end it starts to shift to orange and then red, and that final moment as it's shifting into red, you get Kaipora, who is in who has a red speech bubble, and the implications are maybe she's been telling the story the whole time, or at least some of it.
Yeah, that's what I got from at least this from this. At least the story about the gods and the fire and telling stories, because that's our final point, is wrapping up that thought. This is why human nature is to continue telling stories, and so
yeah. But it's interesting because up until this point we've assumed it was Wonder Woman because it's in the gold with the red outline, which it is standard Wonder Woman narration.
And as far as we know, she's in the realm of the gods, so of course she's going to be able to tell the story, but no, so just that whole tag at the end of why humans tell stories, and having just read a story, it's a nice little capper,
It is.
like.
And unlike a lot of the Future State books, this week that end with the end. It's only the beginning, as it says. And
Yep.
I'm very excited to see more Yara Flor in the in the ongoing line.
Yeah, that's just felt like a taste, like a proof of concept of a sense of who she is. With
a pilot.
With actual stories left to be telling.
So we kind of skipped over her doing the magic trick.
Oh, with the finger?
Yeah, at the beginning. That cracked me up.
She also, I mean, maybe
I love her.
Maybe it comes from something else first, but all I could think of is her quoting Pulp Fiction when she's trying to pull her sister out from the rocks. She has, I'll have you out in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, I think is the line, which just makes me think of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. So yeah, no, just she continues to be a fantastic character.
And Connor just put it down a whole point because he's realised there's a Tarantino reference.
No, because I'm not sure that is a Tarantino reference, because that's something that people have said for. It feels like they've said for forever. I mean, I'm not forever. I don't know if it is a Tarantino line.
I want to ask Joelle Jones, what inspired that line? Was it the old school nature of it, or is it because you like it from Pulp Fiction?
I think even if it did come from Pulp Fiction, I don't actually know if it was around before that or not. It's kind of entered standard. Like, yeah, I've seen so many people say that not in reference to Pulp Fiction, but just say that.
I have literally never heard anyone say it except Pulp Fiction, which is why all I thought about was Pulp Fiction.
Okay, I've heard it a lot, so it's not something I associate with Pulp Fiction. But fair enough, if it's from that. I mean,
I don't know if it is, but I have never heard it come out of anyone's mouth other than that movie.
Huh. I have. Quite a lot, so I didn't realise, yeah,
hanging around with a bunch of hipsters is what you're doing, by the sounds of it.
Yes, the hipsters that quote Tarantino all day.
Hipsters like Tarantino.
I mean, more or less, they're more often than not, though, they're probably gonna share the Leo meme now, more than quote certain things. So
it's a good meme, to be fair.
Yeah, I know it is. I do it inadvertently now. Yeah. When I just point at something. So, it's good.
What's funny, Matt, is actually your emoji on the live stream channel is you pointing. Yeah. So when anyone says anything they want to add a bit of pointing kind of energy to, they'll use your emoji.
I approve.
Yes. So Wonder Woman, Future State Wonder Woman issue 2, Matt, what are you rating it?
So I believe I gave the last one a 10. This one, while it didn't hit as hard, it's still really good. And I'm gonna go all wild and give it a 9.5.
Connor?
I am breaking from my tradition this episode of siding with Matt on the scores exactly. And I'm just giving it a straight 9.
Oh.
Yes,
I think it's very good.
Yeah, I'm giving it a straight 9. Was that what I gave the last one? Or did I give it 9.5? I can't remember.
I think me and Matt maybe both gave it the 10 and you gave it the 9.5, yeah.
So it's very good. I actually would say that maybe there's moments the art shines a bit more in this issue, but I think I enjoyed, there was more of our kind of playful banter in the first one, I think, which is what really spoke to us even more so. So,
for sure.
But a lot to be excited about with Yara Flor, so that's Future State Wonder Woman issue 2. Future State The Flash issue 2.
Good luck.
Brandon Vietti writing with Will Conrad and Brandon Peterson on the art. So I was going to read this, and I should have shut my mouth, because when I was asked on stream yesterday, oh, are you going to read Flash issue 2? I was like, no, never doing it. And then David, for Patreon, because every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can make myself or Connor read a book for one of the higher tiers, decide to give Connor a month off, since he had no replacement for Red Hood ready, and give me Flash Future State issue 2. So it's funny. I mean, it did come back to me quite quickly, but I'd kind of forgotten a lot of what the first issue was to begin with.
Blissfully so have I.
Yes, mainly because I thought I didn't have to remember it, I propose, and that meant I just let myself forget it. So Barry is assembling more of the villain's weapons and tech so he can eventually take on Wally, who's possessed with an evil entity.
I forgot about all of this. It's coming back to me.
Oh no, I remember it because
I think I willfully forgot it, to be honest.
Yes. Reminder that it started with him, Wally killing Jay, killed Bart last issue. There's actually references early on in this issue to him killing Max Mercury, to Iris leaving and probably being killed by Wally after she left. Ellie doesn't know for sure. It's just like endless misery at the start. It's like, oh my god, why no one wants to read this? No one wants this to be a Flash story.
Remember when Johns made Barry the Paragon of Hope in Blackest Night? Good times.
So he gears up and he's basically got this ridiculous outfit on. He's got like boomerangs strapped to his chest. He's got like trickster boots on. He's got the Thinker's helmet on. He's got like Weather Wizard tech sort of attached to things. He looks.
This sounds terrible.
Ridiculous. And he goes to find Wally. Wally grabs his helmet quickly though, and the helmet looks like Jay's helmet, but it's actually got Thinker tech in it. So whatever. And basically, like the middle chunk of this issue kind of falls into a trap that some bad issues of Flash do fall into, and Williamson fell into this trap a bit himself, which is you spend less time actually knowing what's going on, so then getting excited by what the story's doing and what it's, you know, the turns and twists, and instead we have pages of action happening as the exposition explains why each thing is, what each thing actually is doing, because you would never just know it. So it's like, so I zap him with Weather Wizard technology. He tries to grab my boot, and Mirror Master technology beams out. Oh, Rainbow Raider beams out my eyes. And it's constantly explaining what the tech is that's happening as he's using it. You know, Count Vertigo blast or something at one point. He hits him with, and then he creates duplicates using Mirror Master tech. The whole thing is just endless exposition of what he's doing, without any of it actually. You know, I love when we establish rules and mechanics and then use those mechanics in a scene where we understand the shorthands, we understand what's going on, and it's used to create effects up and down. Eventually, he thinks he's talking to like Wally's like real soul, who like falls in his arms, but then it turns out not to be him. It's actually, I think, was it Famine's the name of the spirit. Barry, basically, to try and win this fight, realizes that he has to just essentially paralyze Wally so that this spirit can't do anything with his body.
This spirit, this ties in with the stuff that was in the Teen Titans one, right?
Yes.
Yes. I'm getting to that. There's.
Okay. There's more direct stuff.
I'm getting to that. So this spirit steps out of Wally's body, and this is such a goddamn wordy issue. The spirit then says to Barry Barry realizes after the spirit monologues for ages, Barry has this realization that this thing feeds off of hope, or feeds off like hope being taken away, and that's why it's feasting on the Flash family, because Barry keeps having hope that he can save Wally, and it keeps failing, and then it wants to try and take Barry, and there's a panel where he's looking down at Wally's like paralyzed body, and the ghosts of all the Flash family that have been killed over the years are looking down at him. and he's like, it ends up talking about the 4 horsemen of the goddamn apocalypse and how famine's one of them, and but anyway, the spirit basically takes Barry's body, but maybe turns it into Wally's body. That part confuses me, but what he's done to Barry is that Barry's effectively now been phased out of his body and is effectively a ghost. It's through the Speed Force, it's through tiny Speed Force stuff, but
so what you're saying is this issue boils down to Speed Force, bro. I ain't gonna explain shit.
But he's effectively a ghost. Well, no, because most of the issue is explaining all the tech that he's got, so I wouldn't even say that. The vast majority of the issue is other stuff. But Barry is effectively a ghost, and is now going to have to watch as this evil entity in Wally's body runs around feeding off of all hope on the planet until it eventually kills everything. And the very end of the issue is that Cybeast, if you remember, this is the combination of Cyborg and Beast Boy, shows up to where this all happened and picks up Barry's ring, which is just sort of sitting on the ground, and says, "Oh, we've lost Barry Allen, but he sent me a bunch of intel before he disappeared. So we can now use that to try and save save the world, fight for a better tomorrow. So I'm sure that's what pops up in the Teen Titans 2-parter that's coming up.
Yeah, I just vaguely remember, because famine is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and that was a whole thing in those issues, and I remember them mentioning that Flash was going to tie in.
Yes. This was a painful read from start to finish. It's painful conceptually because it's just so miserable and just so mean-spirited to every single member of the Flash family. It's painful because, from a writing perspective, it's just constant exposition about why things are happening. One of the worst things about Flash as a character, and I love the Flash as a character, but one of the worst things about him in the comics is that sometimes the writers fall into the trap of just constantly having to explain the science of how he's doing something because he's doing something new that he's never done before. And it kind of does that here, but it's not about Flash powers. Instead, it's just a tech. But it's the same trap. It's the same thing. It's just pages and pages of, and now I use this device, and I use this device.
Technobabble.
Yes. And then the actual famine explaining the hope and like everything about it. It's a thoroughly unpleasant read. It's not well written. It's overly wordy. There's monologues left and right. It just all means nothing. It all feels meaningless by the end of it. And then the art's not like offensive or the art's it's fine. Nothing wrong with the art.
Can we talk about some good comics again, please?
I'll move on when I'm ready to move on. Shut your ginger mouth. So this.
Hey David, if any more outbursts out of Pete like that, make him read this again.
This issue over and over.
This is the definition of trash comics, is what it is. And it's not that it's the worst. It's not even the worst written or the worst art ever. The art's perfectly serviceable. The writing's pretty iffy because it is so wordy, but it's not the worst writing ever by any means. It's just conceptually, everything is so goddamn ill-advised that nothing can save it.
I thought this was a good idea.
I don't know. And the idea that the main Flash book might in any way try to set any of this crap up or reference it basically means it's an instant drop. The second it starts to look towards this.
I know
think I need a break from Flash.
Team, right? It's a different team that's on Flash to this.
But
I remember it dealing with Wally-verse stuff and that being a thing in the solicits, and I am worried, frankly.
Yeah. Flash will be an instant drop the second I smell a whiff of any of this crap. So, this is like a 3 out of 10.
Oof.
And it gets the 3 because art is serviceable enough. Writing's not the absolute worst. I can follow the comics. It's not like I'm confused by what panel I go to next. There's some simple basics that it achieves. Right? But it's anger-inducing. It's kind of the same rating I give a Romita Jr. comic, but for very different reasons. So, anywho. Future State Flash. David, go screw yourself. Alright. We shall move on. Future State, Swamp Thing, issue 2. Ram V with Mike Perkins. I have to say, because we liked the first issue of this, but it wasn't a complete home run or anything. It was definitely good, but not great. I do think the second issue is a bit better. I actually like this second part more.
I think it's considerably better. I think this issue has all the heart in it that I needed.
Yeah. There's that, and I feel like this is, I feel, more this creative team's like statement of how they feel about the character more than the first was. Like the first was all set up, right? Yeah.
So just to reiterate where we are at the start of this, humans run into Swamp Thing, and the guy's leading them back to this Star Labs base, where we found out at the end of the issue that Obsidian was being used to power some insane experiment. They look like Woodrue, and it's confirmed very quickly in this. It is Woodrue who's doing this. And yeah, like obviously we have the experiment say we have Woodrue being evil as shit and all these things, where Woodrue just wants to plunge the world into darkness and basically kill all life on Earth, including the plants.
Yeah, and part of his plan with Obsidian here is the darkness hides them from Swamp Thing, so they're basically safe.
Yeah,
this is him just getting his own way. Basically.
Yeah, it's not until the human being actually sort of like leads them through the threshold of the bubble, essentially, to they can see the base. So some great panels of some action of Swamp Thing and he's quote unquote family bash their way in, especially the panels, the pages with the fire, where they're trying
those are gorgeous.
they're trying to burn Swamp Thing and he's yelling like as he's on fire, walking through a wall of flames. Did you think fire would really stop me? It's
like, have you not learnt yet that
I know
I'm better than you? Basically.
It's so good. And Woodrow at this point is not even really human. Like he's replaced himself with so much plant and stuff.
That's what I liked, is that it was so like dystopic, but not in like, usually when you get that in a story, it's a guy that's replaced himself with machines.
Mm-hmm.
Here he's done it with plants, and it's so much more horrific. Like,
Oh yeah,
I think it is.
It doesn't look horrific. It's just the idea.
It's because it's something we don't see, so we're not used to it. Like we're kind of acclimatized to, the cyberpunk replaced with all the body parts, machines, and we're like, oh, okay, it's fine. We've seen that all before. I don't think I've ever seen this before.
I think I would say this looks horrific to the point where if they ever do some sort of, for whatever reason, this gets adapted to live action, I would be fascinated to what the live action, because he's got parts of skin that are kind of stretched over parts of a Swamp Thing-esque body.
This does feel like it could be a movie rather than, it wouldn't make a TV show concept either or anything like that. I mean, I suppose you could, but this feels like a great 2-hour movie you could make out of this 2 issues.
To me, it feels like it's an episode of a TV show where there's like a future episode. Where there's
that works the same as just a movie, right?
You could call it a future state.
You can see what's going on. So there's some implications here that Swamp Thing himself is actually responsible for the state of the world. And effectively, the plan with Obsidian is happening. The Obsidian's... the event has been triggered. It's going to happen.
The Black Sun.
Yeah. And
Obsidian.
And Swamp Thing essentially needs to do something to save what remains of humanity. And he starts to basically... I don't want to say kill, but sort of reabsorb all the life that he's given his family members as they plead with them not to. Like, why are you doing this for the humans?
Is it killing if they don't have souls?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what he comes down to, is he can create life enough that they've got a bit of a personality from characteristics of himself. They've got bodies because he can create that. But they don't have a soul. They can never be more than what he made them to be, not like humanity.
And he even talks about what each one of them kind of represent as a part of him. Like the younger one's kind of his heart or whatever, or his
innocence, doubt, ambition.
And he talks about all this, and effectively what he does, and I do like this ending a lot, where he effectively turns himself into a giant tree that sort of breaks out of the obsidian dome around Earth, so that something is reaching the sunlight and can transfer down nutrients and some food, some sustainable life, and the humans that are left live in his roots at the bottom, and for generations,
giant roots as well.
Yeah,
this isn't they are massive.
So he becomes Yggdrasil, the world
pretty
tree.
much, yeah.
Like, so
but we have we have generations of families. It's implied that it's centuries and centuries this happens. Until eventually, and I like this touch that they're all wearing glasses because I've never seen sunlight before. When they come out at the end, when eventually the obsidian thing, wanes and it goes away. It has this hopeful thing where one leaf is growing, and the idea that might regrow Swamp Thing.
It ties back to something earlier in the issue where he talks about they built farms in this place for their own sustenance, so that by the time he's aware of it, that's it. There's enough there for him to be the Swamp Thing and to take control and use that through the green. And the idea that here there's one seed left, and that's enough for it to come back. It's a very hopeful ending.
Yeah,
and I was gonna say the characters. You get the sense that the characters here, these humans that have through these generations, and the kid at the end says this about his mom is, "Oh, is this like the stories you told me of the Swamp Thing?" Like the idea that there's a legend is growing. He's almost like they're his god because he gave them this. And I'm thinking of like civilizations we find in like various sci-fi shows or fantasy shows where they'll worship something that gives them life in their one little like community. And it kind of feels like that to me here at the end, where they've all been worshipping Swamp Thing for generations because he is kind of the thing that's given them some sustainable life until now.
But it is, when you start to talk about religion, he does sacrifice himself and his kind so humanity can persist. So like there is like this religious layer thrown over there, but it's not overt. It's not like
No, I think it's clearly there.
shoving
It's
it
not,
down.
it's not
But
hidden.
yeah,
But
and so like this is like the beginning of a new world myth. You know, these are the people that were raised in the tree, and it's just like, you know, we usually get this type of stuff in Wonder Woman and whatnot, but here, that aspect, you know, just from what I've read from Ram V and Justice League Dark, you could tell he really likes the world myths,
yeah,
you know, and how they fit, how superheroes fit into that aspect. And here, when you find out that Swamp Thing has created life, but they're just versions of himself. So did he really create life, or did he just mimic life?
It's almost, you could argue, reproduction rather than creation in a way.
But his sacrifice here enables, you know, humanity to keep living at the cost of his own creation or his own self.
It talks about that's why the Green always chooses a human for its avatar, because that capability
untethered,
to go above and beyond.
Right. When it's untethered and whatnot, and just the idea that Swamp Thing destroyed, but it's the horned Swamp Thing that we're getting from the Perkins and Ram V story coming up. You know, it's very much that design.
This has me a lot more excited for that new book now.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I like
as if you weren't.
Well enough. I was excited anyway because Ram V. Don't get me wrong. But that first issue of this was good. But I think I said at the time it was possibly the weakest single issue I'd read from Ram V. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is no. This hit it back out. This is what I expect. This throws out the big concepts. This throws out the heart with it, though. It's this is what I want.
I almost rather have had this be a big double size one that came out together than having the break in between, because this is just a very, like, all of that was set up so he could tell this part of the story, I feel, you know.
I think it reads really well as a 2-issue story. I think as 2 separate issues, it's very heavily weighted towards this one.
I mean, in the long run, though, like, how many people are going to read these individually now at this point? You know, when it's in the trade, as however it's collected, they'll be back to back. People will just read the whole thing.
And I think this and Wonder Woman so far are 2 of the strongest, just by themselves. Like,
it says a lot that it's this Wonder Woman and Catwoman, I would say. As well. So.
Just on how well they stand alone, and who knows, maybe the Superman one as well when we get the second, you know, another part from that, from Philip Kennedy Johnson.
That part of it, absolutely. I was as a whole issue. It's a little.
No, but I'm just talking about pieces that kind of rise above the whole future state branding.
Yeah, I wouldn't put Catwoman in that list because I think Catwoman's still too embedded in the Magistrate and everything going on in the greater world. It's not on its own. It's good. It's great. It's one of the best in terms of quality, but it's not on its own.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
Whereas, that's Swamp Thing. Like, it doesn't even matter that it's future, even though it's set in the future. This could be just a random. Like, you could be reading a Swamp Thing run, and they would do we're going to 2 issues set in the distant future, because this is like not even just like 20 years in the future. This is like
millennia.
Yeah, this is like way off. Like, nothing we ever do in the rest of the run ever has to even remotely build to this.
Kind of like the Immortal Wonder Woman run, right?
Yeah.
That's very, you know, way in the future and just dealing, you know, the dark side stuff.
Yeah. So, but just like this could have almost been in one of those Swamp Thing anthologies they like to put out. You know, like Tales of the Swamp Thing.
Pretty telling that the last Swamp Thing issue, you know, that big anniversary issue, whatever it was that they did last year, it was Ram V and Perkins that did the, you know, the through line story.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's real good.
That's really good. That's why I mentioned the page. The panels of the trees sort of going up and breaking the atmosphere of the obsidian sort of dome and into the sky. They're probably my favorite page in the book. But
I think for me it comes down to either one of the reabsorption panels. I don't know if it'll be Heather, the first one, because of the shock of it, or if it is the the one on the following page with the child one. I don't know which one the name is.
Where he's actually saying what they each represent or what they're.
Yeah. That final panel where it's like, oh, you were all in your own way perfect, and she's like fading away as it does it. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah. All right, Matt, what are you giving it?
I'm giving this one a 9.
Connor?
I'm giving it an 8.5.
I am going to give it a 9. I'm going to be with Matt on this one. All right, cool. Man-Bat issue 1, Dave Wielgosz and Sumit Kumar on the art.
Close enough.
Close enough. You just have to say it confidently with the accent, you know.
How lucky are we to have Kumar on 2 different things this week?
I know, it's nice, isn't it?
It's nice. Also, this book, I had forgotten exactly what it was supposed to be about, right? Because it got solicited and then pulled
This was
and then
supposed to.
resolicited.
I think this was originally supposed to release like last April or so, give or take.
Something. Yeah.
It was right
when everything was shut down.
Yeah, it was right when the shutdown happened. It was supposed to be coming out.
So.
Obviously, when we came back for everything, it just wasn't there for a while, and then eventually they solicited it for now. So.
Right.
Yeah, this is. It's not quite the Man-Bat that's in Justice League Dark. It's not that Man-Bat really at all.
It's earlier. I think there's an editor's note that says it takes place.
There's an editor's note. Right. So again, we kind of know where it's heading, but I was expecting something more of a werewolf kind of story, right? Because that's kind of what I want out of Man-Bat, right? I did not expect to get a story about addiction, and I love it for that.
I mean, has there been an addiction story with Man-Bat before? Because it feels kind of obvious, right?
Well, what's funny to me, Matt, is that you say that, but I know you recently watched The Wolf of Snow Hollow, where the werewolf itself is a metaphor for addiction. So I think there's some parallels here that I think work.
But just of Man-Bat as a monster, and as we've seen him before, I thought this was going to be something that was more pulpy, of Man-Bat going on a spree, and this is what led. I almost felt like this is what was going to lead him to, like, and I feel that that's how it's going to end, where he can learn to be both at the same time, right? And that's where we get him in Justice League Dark. I thought we were going to get
in this form, but he's being better.
Right. And so, but before that, though, we're going to see some like Man-Bat carnage, right?
Yeah.
It's going to just be him going through Gotham. It's going to just be like a fun story. Not that fun stories can't have weight, but then I started reading this, and when it starts with him and Francine, and just the plots that it goes through, and it ends up becoming like an actual story about his addiction and his obsession, and I'm just like, oh man, I wasn't expecting this at all.
What a surprise. Matt wanted a pulp story. He was looking forward to something pulpy.
I just want monsters. At the end of the day, I want some. That's why I got so upset when the Gotham Monsters book wasn't what I wanted it to be, you know, because I want Killer Croc and Man-Bat just tearing stuff apart.
It's all right.
What's important here, though,
Matt.
is Matt still sounds positive, despite it not being what he thought he wanted.
But it's all right, Matt. Don't worry. It's not that long. It's like under 2 months now until that stupid ape, King Kong, is going to get his ass swooped by Godzilla, and it's going to be great. Yeah.
How dare you, sir?
It's going to be great.
It's going to be the Okada Omega of movies.
It says a lot, because I thought I was really looking forward to that movie. I am. But I thought, oh, that'll be the tentpole movie of March for me. And then it's like, Disney are putting out Raya and the Last Dragon in March as well. I'm like, I'm way more excited about that.
I have no idea what that is, but sure.
I love Disney. Do not get me wrong, but Connor, when you say Kong versus Godzilla, put some respect on it, okay? Come on.
Excuse me, it's Godzilla versus Kong. Godzilla gets top billing. I don't want to hear this Kong versus Godzilla nonsense.
Kong versus Zilla. That's it.
If I'm going to pick a side, Godzilla's winning, hands down. It's not even close.
Oh, you guys are the worst. Not seeing him use a weapon that looks like it might be one of Godzilla's scale things on his back.
He's still going to lose, though, isn't he?
No.
I mean, let's be honest. There's going to be a real villain, and then
come on.
It's superhero 101.
Yes.
There's not going to be a real winner, and then they're going to team up to fight the real.
In fact, I'm fairly sure I know what the overall plot is. I've got some predictions based on the trailer. I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil for people who didn't know us. But
that said, when Godzilla has the face turn, of course I'm going to be pro Godzilla at that point. But you put him against my guy, and I can't. This aggression cannot stand, man.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if face turns is the right term given what I think's going on, but I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying. I don't want to get into your theory because we've already talked about your theory after that trailer. But I definitely think there's going to be a whose music is that? I feel. and and a run-in.
Yeah, see if they save Godzilla's main theme for when that happens, and it's like a wrestler's entrance music. Yes.
Also, one of my favorite things of the last week was Doc Shaner seeing the trailer finally, and getting really into all the Godzilla stuff recently, and be like, "Yo, where's Gamera?" And then finding out that Gamera's never been part of the same
different company. It's never happening.
He was so upset, wasn't he?
Gamera showing up in a Godzilla movie is basically like Captain America showing up in a Batman movie.
Right. But most people don't get into the Toho stuff like you do, Pete. Like, I didn't even know a lot of that stuff until we did our episode way back when the first Godzilla came out, and I learned about how much of a Godzilla fan you are. And we talked about Gamera. So I'm sure
who's a bigger Godzilla fan?
Who?
Gail Simone.
Oh no.
Seriously. Whenever the trailer drops, her Twitter just becomes Godzilla Twitter. It's great.
Well, I'm just saying I understand the blood feud with her and Taylor now.
All right, back to Bad. So yes, Francine leaves him because she found more serum. And he's like, no, and she says, "Oh, you helped me, find a cure for deafness for your sister," and he feels a lot. And I think what's to its credit here, I mean, she outright calls him addicted to this, and he loves being Man-Bat more than he loves being with her and all that. But I think to the credit, a lot of his narration, the way he talks about how she'll eventually understand, she'll eventually know this is the right choice. Like, a lot of what he says does sound like an addictive person talking about something. So.
I love the moment, I think it's at the end of like the second page where she's leaving, and it is just her in the doorway, mostly silhouette because of all the light, and it's just her going, "I started moving my stuff out weeks ago, right after I found the serum, waiting for you to tell me, and you never even noticed."
Yeah,
and that's just it, and that's when it cuts away. I think to the his reaction really after that. It's really strong.
Yeah, I do like that Man-Bat has his own narration boxes that are different from Langstrom's. Yeah. It's
because they're treating him as a different being, and it's almost like, again, that whole thing of addiction, where it's that other voice telling you to do something, right? Like, yeah, sure, she left, but like, look how awesome we are when we're together. It's like that devil on the shoulder kind of vibe.
Yeah, so it's full Jekyll and Hyde transformation. He takes the serum, he turns into Man-Bat. He flies over the city and comes across some goons who are stealing a fancy weapon.
A blackout gang.
Yeah, from a van. And yeah, he comes and very quickly Batman shows up, right? Which I love that the narration from Man-Bat is the pretender. He's not a real bat. He doesn't understand what it's like to be a bat. He's not a bat.
He mocks us with his appearance.
Probably my favorite art of the whole book actually is the bottom half of the page that Batman comes into it. It's just like a silhouette of Man-Bat, and then Batman sort of like grappled onto him, so it's like Man-Bat sort of dragging him through the sky with the blinding city lights behind him.
It's that, or like there's a couple of pages before it's the first time he turns into Man-Bat, and it's that view of the city, and it's all the orange, and there's like the sonar coming out from one corner where he is. It's a similar effect to this here, where it's just this wide shot of just the visual of it and the spectacle. It's great stuff.
But Man-Bat's still getting out, even with Batman sort of attached to him. He still goes after this van, and the guys bring out the weapon. They fire it at Man-Bat. It's this big, huge blast. And it's very destructive, though, because we find out, when this thing goes, there's like hundreds of people get injured when this thing goes off.
Specifically deafened as well.
Yeah. It's just a sound wave device. And Langstrom wakes up, not in the Batcave per se, but in one of Batman's locations.
Facilities.
And he's like, strapped to a bed and all this, and he's like, yeah, like I wanted to make sure you were taken as a human, so I brought you here first, but Gordon and Billick and all that are waiting for you to be transferred. And I've given you the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to think you could become better and that you wouldn't let this consume you, but you're an addict, and like and also the big plot thing here is that you're dying. That taking this serum over and over is killing your humanity, and eventually your brain's just going to be dead. You don't have much time left.
Yeah, it's basically just going to shut you into Man-Bat mode permanently. And as it says, Matt, your mic's going. As it says, this time it's the most feral Man-Bat's ever been, with the least humanity. And that's just going to get worse and worse as it goes on.
Which is interesting because we're seeing it from Man-Bat's perspective, and it didn't seem like that, right? Because it's being driven because before he wakes up here with Bruce is that I won, I'm a hero, right? And we see the destruction he's caused, but it's not. He doesn't seem overtly feral.
Not
right?
feral, but I think simplistic. I think is safe to say. And given that he is, a pretty brilliant scientist, as Langstrom.
Yeah, I mean,
feral in comparison.
And deluded, maybe not the right word. Maybe more. I think someone who's like drunk who thinks they've pulled off a success, but they don't realize the chaos they've caused in their past.
And that's what I think is interesting is we're getting Batman's viewpoint of it, right? And it's like, no, dude, like, yeah, you thought you saved the day, but you caused way more destruction
than they ever would have done.
Yeah,
right. So
it's like there's a fly, so you use a bazooka to get the fly.
Right.
Yes,
so I really love that dynamic there. Of, on play.
Yeah. So he's going to transfer him. Gordon's there to oversee it. He's been loaded into the van. But he basically is able to channel there's some serum left in his system, and he basically realizes this, and the inner voice, because I do like this touch that the Man-Bat voice is there before he turns, as if it's already in his head.
It's very much like you said Jekyll and Hyde, Gollum and Smeagol from Lord of the Rings, like that convincing, where he's like, "Don't let us die this way, Kirk." He's like, and he actually actively answers like, Man-Bat, I should listen to you, and then you get the Man-Bat again going, "We can do this." Yeah,
so he turns out a Man-Bat in the van and flies out the roof, and it's
hell of a panel again, that exploding out, and still again not evil because he stops and saves the people in the van. He's like, stick on you, no one will blame you.
Yeah. So I mean that's most of the issue. Obviously, there's the 2 pages here at the end, but I quite enjoyed that book so far, and then these last 2 pages are the only thing that I'm a little bit.
It concerned me because what we get here at the end is Amanda Waller going, "Yeah, okay, we'll send in the Suicide Squad to bring him back."
And it's set in the past, so this is like New 52 Suicide Squad, basically.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
not the fun.
It's Deadshot, Harley, Boomerang, and Croc is what we see.
Yeah.
My concern is I want this to still be a Man-Bat book and not a Suicide Squad book.
That's
been it's stealthed into.
That's my worry. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel that though we'll see Man-Bat, take care of the Suicide Squad.
I'd be happy to see Man-Bat versus Suicide Squad from Man-Bat's perspective.
Yeah.
I don't want it from Suicide Squad.
For an issue. Like I don't want issue 3 to also still be Suicide Squad dealing with them.
I mean, I could accept 2 and 3 if it's a 2-part thing.
Yeah.
Like within this 6-part series, I could accept like 2 parts being versus the Suicide Squad.
Even before I saw the last page, as soon as I got to that second last page and I saw Waller, I was like,
you knew it was coming.
Like, what are we doing?
It's even before you see Waller, the very top thing on that page is Belle Reeve Penitentiary, and I was like, that's not a good sign.
No. So that's the only concern I really have. I enjoyed the book up until that point.
I think up until that point it was pretty fantastic. I have very little to complain about. I think the art's fantastic all the way through. Obviously, it has its moments where it shines. I love the way it treats Batman. There's a bit where he's talking to Langstrom, and it's just a white panel. It's just a silhouette of Batman, and it kind of fades out at the bottom. I think that's fantastic. But like I say, the writing as well, the way it treats it as this addiction. We're seeing it mostly from his point of view. We've got both narration boxes in his head, and to the point where sometimes it's not even just narration boxes; it's full panels, just black panels, with the text inside being in the same font as the Man-Bat narration boxes, which tells you what it is and just how all-encompassing it is. It's really effective.
Yeah. So good stuff. Matt, what are you giving Man-Bat?
I'm giving this an 8.5.
Connor?
Yeah, 8.5. I might have given it the 9 without those last couple of pages. So.
I'll go with a straight 8. Really good stuff, though. So that is Man-Bat. All right, so one last book to talk about then, and it's a Patreon book. So, every month to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, Patreon at the higher tier can make myself or Connor read a book. I've got one left over from last month, which I'm doing today, and that is Animal Man issue 5, the Grant Morrison run, of course. And this has got the famous cover of Animal Man being drawn on the cover.
I think that's what they even used for the omnibus.
Yeah.
They have a different cover on the dust cover, but the actual printing on the book itself, they use that.
Yeah. or I should say more specifically being coloured. The drawing's complete, but this is the brush colouring in his outfit. So I had no idea. Obviously, there's some buzz about this issue and there's some expectations, and I'm like, okay, what is this book going to be? And it starts off with this hitchhiker has been picked up by a trucker, and it's quite dark because she's going to Hollywood to try and make a career. She doesn't want to go to college or anything like that. Implies that the previous trucker kicked her out because she wouldn't do well, as she puts it. So some dark implications right away. And you've got this guy who apparently the trucker used to be a junkie, but some friend, basically saved him and it made him find Jesus. And so they're having this conversation, but very quickly there's an animal on the road. You don't really quite get a good look at what it is, but they hit it and they just keep driving. It's like, no, we don't turn around, just don't look back, just keep going. And that right away there, that feels like their moral mistake is that no one tries to check and see if whatever they hit was okay, or even see what it was. But then the weird thing happens is that this animal, which becomes clearer as it goes on as a coyote, basically starts to almost like Wolverine style kind of reform and come back together and gets back up. And then the full page reveal of like what he actually looks like from the front, coyote, and he's got like something around his neck. He's got like a necklace with like a
like a totem.
I thought it was a metal rod. It actually later on it turns out to be like a scroll of paper. It's like it's like a message that's been rolled up. But and this was a year ago, it says, right? So then it cuts to present day. It's called the Coyote Gospel is the name of the story. Artist is Chaz Truog and Doug Hazelwood. And the art does notably change for a section later on, which is where the second artist is definitely the one that comes in. So immediately I'm like, okay, so this coyote can't die. And what do you think of when you think of a coyote who can die and keep getting back up?
Wile E.
Yeah, you're like a roadrunner. I was like, okay, so we get like a roadrunner kind of, but it's a more sort of R-rated version where you actually see like the organs go back in and he gets back up as if he's coming back to life. Right, so right away we're doing something interesting and wacky and different, but the story's told really well. The characters were engaging. It's amazing to me just how different this is to like modern day Grant Morrison stuff, and just how much easier it is to read and how much I like it compared to based on this and
just you wait.
Based on this and Doom Patrol and just other things from this era. But Buddy's thrown out all the meat. He's decided the family's going to be vegetarian. His son's not very happy about it, though.
It's one of those things that we kind of take for granted with Animal Man now.
Yeah.
But this is, because Grant Morrison is a vegetarian, so this is him kind of projecting himself into it and being like, well, this makes sense for Buddy.
Yeah, it does. It makes sense for the character, for sure. And let's be honest, if we all could do it, we should, because it would actually be better. But, obviously, wife's not too happy about it. Ellen comes in and she's like, what are you doing? Why are you throwing out all the groceries? Like, we're going to be vegetarian. It's like, we have talked about this, perhaps, before we started throwing everything out. Maybe we could slowly transition, get the kids used to the idea. Just that kind of thing, as opposed to this sudden, he storms out, he's mad that she's not accepting this, and he storms out and goes for a fly. And this is where we sort of bring back in some of the story elements, where the trucker from the start of the story is now back out in the desert, because the road that we're on was in the desert, right? Makes sense given they were on their way to, LA in California. And he goes out and he's got a hunting rifle, he's got dynamite, and he's hunting something. He's hunting this coyote, and he's convinced that he needs to kill this coyote. And we find out that there's a friend that got him on the straight and narrow, was killed. And then he reads in the paper that the hitchhiker he had a year ago became a prostitute and died. And we don't get the full context, we just sort of see part of the headline, but that's the part you see, that she was killed and she was a prostitute. And he thinks this coyote's the devil, and he's going to kill. And at this point I'm like, he's hunting the coyote. This is I mean, obviously the coyote's the one hunting the Roadrunner in the cartoon, but it's hard not to start really thinking about it. So there's some great panels here of him hunting this, and the coyote's very big, almost werewolf size, and kind of the way that the eyes are very emotive. But he shoots the coyote, and it falls, into a ravine, and it lands, and it starts to reform. And then the narration from the Coyotes, that it sees like, you know, a shadow getting bigger, and the guy's like throwing down giant boulders to try and make it stay dead. It goes down. He goes down to use what he calls the magic bullet. He's got one more bullet, and it's going to be the magic bullet. And Buddy's sort of flying overhead at this point, but he's basically forgotten that he's laid a trap. He laid the dynamite tripwire down there, and the Coyote triggers it. So there's this big explosion. Buddy's flying overhead, so that makes Buddy come down. But even after the explosion, the Coyote reforms and is completely fine. And the Coyote just walks out of where the explosion was, because Buddy's found this guy's truck, and he's sort of looking around to see what's going on. And the Coyote comes up, takes the necklace off, and hands him this scroll of paper out of the little casing. And Buddy looks at this paper, and as he unscrolls it, we go to the next page, and the art completely changes, and it becomes way more Looney Tunes. It's really cartoony. And he has this Coyote's hunting what looks to be a road rage. We never actually see it properly. We just see sort of the speed lines of whatever he's hunting. But the implications here that this is clearly Wile E. Coyote.
Yep.
Is very, very clear. And he basically it tells a story of him becoming so disillusioned that he keeps getting hurt and he can never catch him. And he decides to go out of the desert. He goes up to the elevator, and he goes to God, which we never see. We just see the POV of like the paintbrush. So the idea that this is, you know, the God is the artist who's creating these stories. May or may not be Grant Morrison. I say may or may not be because technically this is, you know, Grant Morrison didn't create Looney Tunes, so I don't know if I necessarily assume that this is
But I
Morrison.
think the assumption here is, because again, this is a very memorable issue. I do remember this. Is that it is Grant Morrison. He is playing God with this story. He's the storyteller here.
Basically, this God just says, well, you know what? I'm going to put you in a different universe, right? This is the hell you're going to have to live, is that you're being sent to this other universe. And that kind of ties into the start of this, where that's when he kind of appeared in front of the truck and when he get hit. And like a vulture's eating his innards before he like reforms and he gets back up. But there's kind of a joke here where it cuts back to Buddy looking at the scroll, and it's just all a bunch of squiggles. And he looks up and says, I can't read this. So he didn't actually get any of what we just got in the book. And that's when the hunter with the sniper rifle shoots him with the silver bullet, which clearly he thinks is a werewolf, or at least is mixing some werewolf
It's
ideas.
not an unfair assumption.
Yeah. And this actually does kill him. He holds the bullet wound and he falls over. The guy who shot him starts crying and saying that he saved the world. He's talking to his dead friend. He's like, oh, I did it, Billy. I saved the world. And he kills over with the gun. Billy's looking at the animal, at the Coyote, with his tears in his eyes. And the Coyote, notably, is his arms are stretched out kind of like Christ. And then we see a paintbrush come in for the final two panels and paint in the blood. Because at first the blood's white. It's just like a white, you know, everything else is coloured in. But the blood isn't. It's just white. And then the paintbrush comes in and colours it in red. And it just says, the end, folks. So, I'm at a disadvantage here because I read this right before we came out to record. I feel like I need a week to process what the hell this issue is doing.
Yeah, just wait till you get further in the run.
But here's the thing though. Unlike a lot of modern Grant Morrison, this was still enjoyable to read. I still followed the basic events of what was happening. I can't follow modern day Grant Morrison. Those couple issues I read of his Green Lantern were just confusing, and I didn't know what was going on in an annoying way. I understood the premise of each scene individually.
That wasn't what I was getting at. I just meant in terms of this being kind of really meta and playing with creationism.
Yeah.
He takes that to the next level within this very run. I would say still in a very comprehensible and readable way along these lines still.
Which is fine.
Enjoy it.
I have no problem with weirder meta or psychological concepts. I'm a fan of David Lynch. I'm a fan of other creators who play with things in weird ways.
When I said just wait, I wasn't saying that you wouldn't enjoy it. I just meant if you thought you needed a week to process this, wait till you get later. You'll feel like you need a whole month to process it.
You know, I mean, what exactly is this getting at here? I'm thinking about this cartoon character who's taken out because he's basically like the mundane repetitiveness and like the never succeeding of his existence leads him to ask for something better. So he's put into a world where he's killed more brutally and then eventually dies. And his life ultimately becomes meaningless because the message he's there to deliver doesn't even get delivered because Buddy can't read it. Unless there's an arc after this where Buddy takes this scroll to people and they start trying to translate it, which I doubt. But
no, I think that's the point of, like, in this striving for more, and then it kind of being ultimately pointless, and maybe it's some level of being acceptance of what your life is. Not that you can't hope for better, but not that necessarily just because a quote unquote better life doesn't mean you will actually be in a better situation in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the story of the Coyote kind of parallels the story of the hitchhiker, in the sense that she's moving somewhere for a better life. I don't think for any reason, though, that this story is suggesting that you shouldn't hope for a better life or shouldn't work towards a better life. Maybe it's a warning and just sort of willy-nilly going off and just...
I think it's against trying to get an easy way out of just jumping, in this case, asking God to just, all right, give me a better life. It is about, earning and working for a better life, and accomplishing that yourself rather than just taking a shortcut.
Yeah.
Right. And also, don't forget, in multiple Native American mythos, the coyote is the trickster god.
Yes.
So the fact here that he
don't forget, like I ever knew that, for sure.
No, well, it is. It's a thing. Like coyotes are actually pretty cool, and that's why they got the trickster, across all these different cultures. But that's why when you said that Buddy couldn't read this, right? I'm sure there's other different aspects to it, but my brain went to the, coyote as a trickster aspect.
It's worth mentioning the final panel where the arms are scrolled out and he's dying there. Mm-hmm. When the last panel, the camera's sort of pulled back as the brush is finished painting. It's literally in the middle of a crossroads, and obviously there's again the Christ imagery, but I think more importantly just the idea of a crossroads and what that usually means from a story perspective and a journey perspective. Is Buddy at a crossroads, and maybe him learning that there's no easy way outs or easy fixes. And maybe that ties into a little bit of him just trying to force the vegetarian thing on his family.
In the same way that he doesn't understand what the coyote was sharing, his family doesn't understand that.
Yeah. So there's stuff here, and it's compelling from start to finish, and the art is very strong throughout. I was always into it. I was always intrigued by what was going on. But it does take time to sort of stop and think about what it's actually trying to say. What's going on. And that's maybe not necessarily new or different for Grant Morrison, but certainly this was throwing a lot of concept. But sometimes it's a bit more easygoing in the sense that you're already starting to know what the themes of the story are. So when he throws in something weird, your mind jumps to kind of thematically how it'll tie in quicker. Whereas here it was just immediately, okay, this is a completely standalone issue that doesn't tie into anything that came before, not really in any big way. Maybe it'll tie into stuff coming after, but that doesn't really matter because I've not got there yet. It's completely on its own, and it's memorable. I remember this issue. It's distinct and it's bold in the ideas that it's making, and it's profoundly sad in a number of ways. And even the idea of this trucker who sees the coyote as the devil, and he just becomes the killer of this thing looking for a better life, this life looking for a better life, in the same way that the system became the killer of this girl who moved to LA for a better life. So he's kind of perpetuating the same sort of sad violence that there's a lot going on here. It's excellent. It's like a 9 out of 10. I can't really say why to my best ability.
Well, we should ask you again next week.
But that's Grant Morrison. But yes, it's very good throughout. So there you go. That's that on issue 5. Join me later in the month for issue 6, and we'll see how that tackles my brain. So that'll take us on to the final part of the show where we pick our favorites of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and top 5 books. So we'll dive in with panel / moment. Matt, what you got for us?
I'm gonna go for Man-Bat, and it's gonna be when he transforms, and we see all the echolocation rings, and that's his change in perspective. because it's over that cityscape, and just Kumar handles the art like so well. Like I wanted to give him credit.
Good. You said Transformers, which reminded me earlier today I saw a Photoshop for a crossover called Fast Farmers, which was Fast and the Furious meets Transformers. And it had The Rock and Mark Wahlberg in the poster, and it was like just like nightmare fuel.
I'd watch it as long as Bay's not directing it. Get Justin Lin and I'm in.
Connor, what are you reading? What's your favorite panel / moment? Sorry.
My favorite panel, I'm going to go from Swamp Thing. I'm torn between the 2 points of when he's reabsorbing the other elements of himself. But I think I'm going to go with the second one, the end of the page where he's kind of gone through what they all represent, and it's the child of the green. And just you were all perfect, and she's fading away. It's a great panel.
Yeah, there's a couple of things from Wonder Woman that I could use because some wonderful art in there. But I'm actually also going to go with Swamp Thing, but I'm going with the tree sort of growing and breaking through the obsidian barrier and then seeing the sky and the sun. I love that. It's a 3-panel page with 3 tall panels to emphasize the height of everything. Really beautiful done. I felt the epic kind of natural spectacle of what it was. Was great. So, favorite cover of the week. I suppose I'll jump in here. A few good options. The variant for Superman of Metropolis is all right actually. Swamp Thing's variant's also pretty decent. Wonder Woman covers are good. The next Batman variant is got the neon and it's very pretty. My actual pick though is the variant to Man-Bat, which is Man-Bat. It's got the orangey red sky with the gothic building behind him, and he's just kind of flying through the air. Very, very pretty. The art on that is Kevin Nolan. So that's my cover. Connor?
It's the Jenny Frison Wonder Woman variant. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some nice covers this week, but that one just was head and shoulders above all the rest for me. Like, it wasn't even close with how much better that one is for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's the Jenny Frison. Like, keeps rolling the hits.
Self-parodies the period.
So I looked through every single issue we talked about on this episode. I was like, even the ones I didn't read, I looked through and was like, maybe there's a good cover. And there are a lot of good covers this week. But this was the only like a great cover that really jumped out at me. Not even close.
Okay. So best art of the week, Connor?
I'm gonna give it to Man-Bat, Sumit Kumar. I think just some great stuff. It was kind of that a Wonder Woman, I think, for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I was between Wonder Woman and Swamp Thing, and I think I'm going to go with Wonder Woman overall. But yeah, those are the 2 sort of clearer choices for me. Matt?
Joelle Jones for Wonder Woman.
Yeah. There you go. Joelle Jones. What a surprise. All right. Top 5 books of the week then. Matt, you're up first.
All right. So it's going to be Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Man-Bat, and then the next Batman, then Superman and Metropolis.
Cool. Connor?
Yeah, I'm pretty much along the same lines there. Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Man-Bat, and then next Batman, because I don't have Superman and Metropolis.
Right.
Yeah, I will go. Wonder Woman at number 1, Swamp Thing at number 2. I may sneak the next Batman before Man-Bat, then at number 4. And then I guess by default, Flash is number 5 because that's the 5th one I read. I hate life.
Animal Man number 5.
Animal Man would be higher than that. I give it a 9.
It would, but just look, honorable mention at 5 instead of Flash, I guess.
Animal Man would have been like number 2 or 1 probably if I was including that. But hey, there you go. So that's our picks of the week. I will tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. We have Rorschach issue 5, which feels very soon after the last issue. The last one got delayed a little bit, I think, which is why it feels so soon. Clearly, it wasn't delayed for art reasons. Otherwise, this one would also be pushed back. So, but yeah, we got Rorschach issue 5. We have Future State Dark Detective issue 3. Future State Justice League issue 2. Green Lantern season 2 issue 11 is out. So Grant Morrison's Reign of Terror is almost over. Future State Teen Titans issue 2 is out. Future State Robin Eternal issue 2. Future State Green Lantern issue 2, which I'm pretty positive none of us are going to read, but it's there. Future State Superman Wonder Woman issue 2 is out. Future State Kara Zor-El Superwoman issue 2 is out. And then on top of that, also coming out is American Vampire 1976 issue 5, Sweet Tooth The Return issue 4. Both books I'm interested in eventually.
Just not right now.
Yeah. And then they've also got their Valentine's Day anthology book out. It's $10. I assume it's like 80 pages. It's called DC Love is a Battlefield issue 1. So that is also out. But yeah, honestly, a solid week of Future State stuff. Rorschach is a nice capper as well, I think, for me and Matt. So
it's quite a big week. It's not huge, but it feels big after this week.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what's coming next week. There'll be a few more weeks before we can finally say a list of books that don't have Future State at the start of like 8 out of 10 of the titles.
We've still got 1 or 2 issues as well that are actually one-shots that we haven't even had like a first issue of yet. So there's still at least like one completely new thing to go through in this month.
I mean, just one, though.
Is there only one? I thought there was maybe 2. But
as opposed to next month. No, well, that's not my point. Maybe 2. I don't know. You're the one who said it.
No.
But the point of being is that next month is all new stuff, because it's all new runs or returns to runs.
I meant after last month where everything was new until like the second weeks. Where there's at least still something.
So that is what's coming next week. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers, although I don't actually have the list up. Oh shit. I had to restart my computer before I started, so I don't have it at the ready.
Shambles.
Yeah. Hey, Conrad, why don't you tell them about ways they can support us other than Patreon?
No. I mean, I could do. You can go and watch all our stuff on YouTube. You can check out audio versions if that's how you get this. You might do. We have other stuff like previously in the Multiverse, where me and Pete do classic DC runs. That is back after a lengthy break, but it is exclusive to the Patreon at $5 tiers for the first 4 weeks. So they have presumably started getting that, Pete.
They have 2 episodes, yes. They have 2 episodes.
They do, yes, good. So you will get the first episode of that to the public in a couple of weeks, or you can just go and give us $5 and get it now. There's 2 episodes waiting for you right away.
Yeah, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. That's what that is. And of course, if $20 and up, you get credit as a producer. So thank you to our producers for the month of Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. So thank you to you guys. You can also support us for completely free with hitting like buttons and subscribe buttons and all that sort of thing. For the record, I have the list of names on a sticky note, which is a YouTube, or not YouTube, but Windows feature. You can have like sticky notes that are just on your desktop, but when you restart your computer, it shuts down, so you have to open them up again. That's what I was doing there.
Tells you how often Pete restarts his computer, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I only restarted my computer because when I went to open up one of the programs to record, it kind of froze a little bit and acted weird. I was like, oh, it's been like a month. I should restart. So,
yeah.
But yes, so thank you to our Patreon producers. And that's pretty much everything. You guys on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast for updates and whatnot. And I'll remind everyone once again that to celebrate our 250th episode, although it won't be on the episode 250 because the episode would be ridiculously long if we did, we're going to do a top 50 DC characters user submitted vote countdown style thing. Voting for that will be during March, so just if you want to start thinking about it, but I'll just keep reminding people. And then the results will be around the 250 time, towards the end of April. Will be the idea. So. Look forward to that. But otherwise, that's that is us. I'll just take time to promote Mail Fuzz Live, which is the second YouTube channel, which is where I do live streams. We do like watch party stuff with movies, and just chat about stuff and whatnot, and play games. So, I'll promote that enough. I never bring it up, so I'll mention it. There you go. So thank you very much for joining us here for episode 239. It's been a pleasure, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, And remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.
SHAZADAM.